Chapter 71. In the Yangqiu County Government. Jianghu County magistrates were not in the government office today. Constable Zhou paced around and said, "It's normal for the 3 souls to dissipate after death, but there must be something strange about the 7 souls dissipating so quickly. Is there such a possibility?" Xianxia thought for a moment and said, "The monster first killed the father and son, and then someone took their 7 souls." Constable Zhou shook his head and said, "Although we can't rule out such a possibility, I think it's more likely that the deaths of these 2 people were man-made. As for the wounds on their bodies, they were done later to mislead us into thinking that they were killed by the monster. This is a common method of heretical cultivation." Xianxia looked at him and asked, "Constable Zhou, do you suspect that it was done by heretical cultivation?" Constable Zhou nodded and said, "Have you tried to find their souls?" Li Qing said, "I have, but the immortal guiding talisman didn't respond. If it was really done by heretical cultivation, I'm afraid that their souls have been refined, and the traces of their existence have completely disappeared." Constable Zhou frowned and said, "He's in the light and we're in the dark. Unless he makes a move next time, we can't grasp his movements at all. This case is troublesome." "Not necessarily." A voice came from the door. Old Wang leaned against the door frame and said, "A person's soul doesn't dissipate so quickly. Even if it has been refined, it can still be sensed by the Fulu after a short time. However, at this time we can't use the ordinary Fulu?" Constable Zhou asked doubtfully. "Then what kind of Fulu should we use?" Old Wang shook his head and said, "I don't know. I seem to have seen it in a book, but I can't remember which one." Old Wang was indeed a living fossil in the government office. After more than 2 hours of rummaging through the bookshelves in his duty room, he actually found an obscure Taoist book. The nameless Fulu was recorded in this obscure Taoist book. Unlike the immortal guiding talisman, this Fulu didn't need a living soul to guide it. As long as there was a trace of the deceased soul, the Fulu would be able to sense it. Of course, the prerequisite was that the trace of soul was within the Fulu's sensing range. In addition, the Fulu was a mid-level Fulu, and it required cultivation above the realm to complete the talisman. Constable Zhou looked at Li Qing and said, "In the government office, only you and Lord Jiang are at the 3rd realm. Lord Jiang isn't here, so I'll have to trouble Miss Qing with the talisman." Xianxia looked at the Fulu and frowned. The Fulu's talisman is too complicated. Without a few days of effort, it's impossible to learn it. By that time, their remaining soul would have dissipated long ago. Li Qing didn't say much. She nodded and said, "Take a few strands of their hair and prepare the talisman materials. I'll try." Xianxia and Constable Zhou didn't have much hope. Only Li Mu had full confidence in Li Qing. The more complex the Fulu's talisman was, the harder it was to inscribe. Due to the need to imbue the talisman with transcendence energy, the difficulty of completing the talisman would increase exponentially. However, with the heart-calming mantra, this level of Fulu was nothing at all. Li Qing carefully studied the Fulu's talisman. After a while she put down the book. She picked up the brush and dipped it in cinnabar. She closed her eyes for a moment and slowly opened them. Li Mu saw the tip of the brush dancing on the talisman paper like flowing water. In a flash, a Fulu was formed in Li Qing's hands. Li Qing put down the brush and said, "It's done." "So fast? You succeeded?" Constable Zhou's face was full of disbelief. Xianxia even opened his eyes wide. As a disciple of the Fulu school, he knew better than anyone how difficult it was to draw the Fulu just now. How could someone succeed in one try? He pursed his lips and looked at Li Qing and asked, "Miss Qing, have you learned this Fulu before?" "No." Li Qing didn't explain too much. She drew another Fulu with no name. She folded the 2 Fulu into the shape of a paper crane and threw it into the air. The 2 paper cranes floated in the air and danced above everyone's heads. Seeing that the paper cranes didn't have any intention of leaving, Constable Zhou sighed and shook his head, saying, "It seems," before his voice fell, the 2 paper cranes drew an arc and suddenly flew out of the county office. "It really works." A trace of joy appeared on Constable Zhou's face. He said, "You guys follow it quickly." Constable Zhou stayed in the county office. Li Mu, Li Qing and Xianxia followed the paper cranes out of the county office. Generally speaking, those who took people's souls for cultivation were heretical cultivation in the soul refining or soul condensing realm. Only cultivators in these 2 realms had such a great desire for other people's souls and boldness. Although the souls of mortals were also useful for high-level cultivators, except for those with pure yang or pure yin physiques like Li Mu or Lu Hanyan, ordinary souls needed to reach a large number to be helpful to their cultivation. Those who chose ordinary people alone were generally not very strong. The paper cranes flew out of the county office and traveled through the county at an extremely fast speed. The paper cranes didn't have life and naturally didn't have spiritual intelligence. They only knew how to fly in a straight line in the air. If Li Mu's light body technique hadn't reached a small success and could walk on the roof, he might not have been able to keep up with Li Qing and Hanja's footsteps. The paper cranes flew for a quarter of an hour and then disappeared into a courtyard with a tall gate. Li Mu landed in front of the courtyard. He looked up and saw the plaque in front of the gate with the words, Ren Mansion written in gold. Great Zhou's laws stipulated that officials couldn't easily break into private residences. Hanja went forward and knocked on the door. Very quickly, a servant of the Ren Mansion poked his head out and said impatiently, "What are you doing?" Hanja looked at him coldly and said, "We suspect that your mansion is harboring important criminals. Immediately open the door for a search." When the servant saw that the people outside were officials, he hurriedly ran back. Hanja pushed the door open and entered. Li Qing and Li Mu followed behind him and walked out. Just as they entered the Ren residence, someone ran out from the back of the residence and said in a panic, "My lord, I was in the wrong the previous time. But you have beaten me and punished me. My Four Seas bookstore has even closed down. Why are you still here?" Li Mu was also a little surprised to see the shopkeeper of the Four Seas bookstore. "Shopkeeper Ren." Hanja obviously recognized him and asked, "Is this your home?" "It's this commoner's residence." Shopkeeper Ren nodded his head repeatedly and asked with a bitter face, "My lords, what is the matter this time? This commoner has been obediently staying at home these days and hasn't even left the house." Li Qing looked ahead and said, "Inside. A serious criminal escaped here. Wait for us to search first." Hanja said to Shopkeeper Ren and strode inside. "A serious criminal?" When Shopkeeper Ren heard this, his expression changed and he immediately said, "My lord, you must search carefully. Don't miss anything." In the deepest part of the Ren mansion, in front of a single courtyard, the courtyard door was tightly shut. 2 paper cranes were fluttering in front of the courtyard door. Li Qing waved her hand and the 2 paper cranes flew back into her sleeve. Hanja stood at the courtyard door and asked, "Who lives here?" Shopkeeper Ren said honestly, "It's my son. He just became the disciple of an immortal master a few days ago and has been cultivating at home. The criminal shouldn't have run here." Hanja walked forward and said, "Let's go in and take a look." Creak. The courtyard door was pushed open from the inside and a young man walked out of the courtyard. The young man had a handsome face and fair skin. He held a black cat in his arms and stood at the courtyard door. He looked at Li Mu and the other 2 and asked, "My lords, is there anything I can help you with?" The next moment 2 paper cranes flew out from Li Qing's sleeve and kept circling above the young man's head. Fu Lu had a reaction, which meant that this young man was the heretical Cultivation who refined the souls of the 2 victims. Hanja pulled out his knife and said angrily, "So it's you?" The young man's expression changed for the first time. He threw down the black cat in his arms and retreated into the courtyard. The courtyard door was suddenly closed. "Be careful." When Hanja was about to chase after him, Li Mu reminded him and kicked Hanja's butt. Hanja staggered and fell to the side. Meow. A black shadow flashed in front of his eyes. Hanja only felt pain on his face. He reached out and touched his face. A few bloody marks immediately appeared on his fingers. After the black cat was thrown to the ground by the young man, it suddenly bounced up. If not for Li Mu's kick, Hanja's eyes would have been scratched out. The black cat's claws missed and it turned to attack Li Mu. Whoosh! A sword light flashed in front of Li Mu's eyes. The black cat screamed and its body was cut into 2 pieces. The 2 pieces of the cat's body fell to the ground. Li Qing simply put away her sword. The 3 of them walked into the courtyard. The young man stood in the middle of the courtyard and made a hand seal. Li Mu suddenly blacked out and couldn't see anything. "Array!" The next moment he heard Hanja's exclamation. His eyes couldn't see anything and he couldn't tell the direction. He only felt that the surroundings were filled with ghostly aura and danger lurked everywhere. Li Mu didn't feel safe at all. He couldn't care less. After silently reciting the Heart Sutra, he saw light in front of him. Li Qing had seen this scene before, so she wasn't surprised. "What is light?" Hanja was stunned at first. Then he looked at Li Mu in surprise and asked happily, "You became a monk?" Chapter 72. When did you become a monk? Which temple did you go to? Why didn't you shave your head? When did you shave your head? Are monks not allowed to marry? When Hanja saw the Buddhist light emanating from Li Mu's body, his face lit up with excitement as he asked a series of questions. "You're thinking about the peach?" At this time, Hanja was still concerned about whether he became a monk or not. Li Mu was too lazy to explain. The golden light on his body became even brighter, completely illuminating a small area around the three of them. Beyond the golden light, there was still darkness. Hanja asked curiously, "What peach?" Seeing Li Mu ignoring him, he said, "This is a formation. Everyone is connected by holding hands. Stay where you are and don't move around casually. If you get separated, you may not be able to meet again." Hanja explained and then extended his hand to Li Qin. Li Mu took the opportunity to hold Hanja's hand and gave his hand to Li Qin. This way Hanja was on the left, Li Qin was on the right, and Li Mu was in the middle holding two people. Hanja glared at him but didn't say anything. He took out a talisman and threw it into the air. Li Mu raised his head and saw that in the darkness outside the golden light, lightning flashed and crackled. Countless lightning bolts exploded and formed a lightning net. Lightning magic is a powerful magic that only cultivators in the middle realm can come into contact with. However, the Fugu school's specialty is to use the talisman to release magic that is far beyond the cultivator's current level. However, Hanja's lightning magic released through the talisman was not as powerful as his confrontation formula. After the lightning net exploded, Li Mu heard a muffled groan from outside the formation. Even the surrounding darkness became thinner, but the formation was still not broken. Formations are also an important branch of Taoism's magic. The Spirit Array sect and the Fugu school are both part of the 6 Taoism sects. Whether it is the talisman or the formation, it is a way for cultivators to use external forces to increase their own strength. A powerful talisman or formation can easily bridge the gap between realms. Just like a child, under normal circumstances, could not defeat an adult. However, if the adult was unarmed and the child had an AK in his hand, the outcome of the battle would be different. Normal formations rely on auxiliary items such as formation flags. It is very simple to trap an enemy with a higher cultivation than oneself. It even need not be controlled from the outside. Hanja's thunder charm didn't have much effect. Li Qin closed her eyes for a moment and then opened them again. She pointed in a certain direction and said, "The eye of the formation is there. Attack together." Li Mu loosened his grip, held Bai, and channeled his mana. The long saber in Hanja's hand also began to flicker with white light. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. 3 rays of sword light attacked the direction Li Qin pointed at the same time. Crack. Li Mu heard the sound of porcelain shattering. The next moment, the darkness in front of him suddenly disappeared. The 3 of them reappeared in the middle of the courtyard. At the corner of the wall, a piece of jade was broken into several pieces. At the same time, a figure jumped over the courtyard wall and quickly fled into the distance. Li Qin flew up the courtyard wall and said to Hanja, "We can't fight in the city. Don't chase him too closely. Let him leave the county first in case he does something desperate and endangers the people." Understood. Hanja nodded and his figure also leaped up. Li Qin and Hanja went after the young man, while Li Mu stayed where he was. The young man's cultivation was higher than his, and his speed was extremely fast. It was impossible for Li Mu to catch up with him as he ran for his life. Shopkeeper Rin walked in with a blank face and muttered, What happened?" Li Mu stayed behind to understand the situation. He looked at Shopkeeper Rin and asked, "When did your son start cultivating?" Shopkeeper Rin seemed to have realized something at this moment. He said with a trembling voice, Two months ago." Li Mu frowned and asked, "He has never cultivated before?" Shopkeeper Rin shook his head with a pale face. No. The feeling that the young man gave Li Mu was that he wasn't much weaker than Li Qin. In just 2 months he had gone from an ordinary person to the 3rd level. No matter how talented he was, it was impossible for him to achieve such a feat unless he had been taking shortcuts in the first 2 realms of spirit refining and spirit consolidating. The fastest shortcut in these 2 realms was to steal other people's souls to cultivate. In recent months, there had not been a large number of murders in Jianghu County. However, it was certain that for this person to cultivate to such a realm, many people must have died in his hands. In 2 months, with the help of Li Qin and Yu Hanyun, Li Mu tried his best to condense 3 souls. This was already considered an extremely fast cultivation speed. As for Shopkeeper Ren's son, even if he had a large amount of soul power and courage, it was impossible for him to break through 2 realms in 3 months. There must be someone guiding him from behind. Li Mu looked at Shopkeeper Ren and asked in a deep voice, "This case is very important. How did he start cultivating?" Tell me in detail. Shopkeeper Rin swallowed a mouthful of saliva and said nervously, one day 2 months ago Yuan went out to play and met an immortal master. He said that the immortal master said that he had a wood elemental body and was very talented in cultivation. He asked Yuan if he was willing to cultivate with him. Yuan agreed at that time. After that Yuan came home and told me that I felt that cultivation was not a bad thing, so I agreed. Shopkeeper Rin looked at Li Mu in panic and asked, My lord, what happened? Li Mu looked at him and said, Your son killed many innocent people for his own cultivation. That's impossible. Shopkeeper Rin trembled and hurriedly said, My lord, you must be mistaken. Yuan has been timid since he was young. He didn't even dare to kill a chicken. How could he kill people? A timid person would not treat a cat demon in the embryonic transformation realm as a pet. He would also not set up a formation and flee after seeing Li Mu and the other two. People would change, especially after they started cultivating. As their strength increased, their mentality would also undergo a huge change. Especially when he tried to cultivate with the souls of living people, he would completely become a heretical cultivation cultivator. He would view human lives as grass and human souls as tools for his cultivation. And according to Li Mu's guess, that so-called immortal master did not have the intention of taking in Ren Yuan as a disciple. To be able to allow Ren Yuan to cultivate in such a way and rapidly increase his strength, it meant that this person was most likely also a heretical cultivation cultivator. When a heretical cultivation cultivator encountered a wood elemental body, he would definitely not think of taking in a disciple. Although the 5 elemental body was not as rare as the pure yang and pure yin bodies, it still had a very special use for heretical cultivation cultivators. Li Mu had read in books that many heretical cultivation cultivators would use the 5 elemental body as a cauldron to guide their cultivation. In an extremely short period of time, they would rapidly increase their cultivation. After that, they would devour their souls or primordial spirits to break through their own realms. Li Mu looked at Shopkeeper Rin again and asked, Where is Ren Yuan's master? Shopkeeper Rin shook his head and said, He comes and goes without a trace. He only comes to our residence occasionally to guide Yuan in his cultivation. He has not appeared for more than a month. Usually he can only find us, but we can't find him. He swallowed his saliva and asked Li Mu, My lord, is there a problem with that immortal master? Li Mu said coldly, The immortal master is fake. The demon is real. He didn't take your son as a disciple out of good intentions. That can't be. Shopkeeper Ren's face was filled with doubt. He said, That immortal master is really capable. I have seen it with my own eyes. He can walk on water and sit on fire, ride the wind, and even spit out flames from his mouth. He disappeared under my nose. Walk on water and sit on fire, ride the wind? Li Mu's body trembled. He suddenly looked at Shopkeeper Ren and asked, What did you say? Walk on water, sit on fire, ride the wind, spit out flames, invisibility. These were all techniques that only transcendent cultivators could learn. He thought that the heretical cultivation cultivator was at most in the spirit condensation realm. He did not expect that he had already entered the middle realm. Li Qing was only in the 3rd realm of the spirit condensation realm, and Hanja was in the soul condensation realm. No matter what, they were no match for a middle realm cultivator. Chapter 73. Shopkeeper Ren was shocked by Li Mu. He nodded his head in a daze and said, Not only me, when the immortal master demonstrated these supernatural powers, many servants were also there. If you don't believe me, you can ask them. Li Mu didn't have time to confirm. He picked up the paper crane on the ground and disappeared on the spot. He chased after Li Qing and Hanja. Ren Yuan had a supernatural realm master who had already entered the middle 3 realms. He was a master who could practice dozens of high-level supernatural powers. Even if they didn't meet Ren Yuan's master, Ren Yuan wouldn't be able to handle some of the things a cultivator in the middle 3 realms casually gave him. He had to remind them to be careful. Outside Jianghu County, in the wilderness, after running for a long time, Ren Yuan stopped. He turned around and looked at Li Qing and Hanja who were chasing after him. He said coldly, How long do you plan to chase me? Hanja breathed heavily. He bent down and pointed at him. He said loudly, Everyone has the right to kill evil spirits and demons. Even if you run to the ends of the earth, you won't be able to escape. Ren Yuan's face darkened. He secretly crushed a jade stone in his hand. A white light flew out from the jade stone and disappeared into the distance in an instant. After doing this, he took out a black flag and threw it into the air. The flag exploded into a cloud of black fog and shrouded Xianxia and Li Qing. It instantly enveloped the two of them. Xianxia's hands formed a seal and he quickly chanted, "Wind comes out of Gen Horn, earthly soldier deployment, Sun Fang's road ahead, evil ferocious wind, urgent as the law command." A gust of wind suddenly appeared beside him. However, the black fog wasn't like ordinary fog. The wind made their clothes flutter, but it couldn't blow away the black fog. Xianxia was helpless. He could only throw out another guiding thunder talisman. Lightning flashed in the black fog. This fog was obviously of the Yin attribute. Under the lightning, it kept rolling and shrinking until it completely disappeared. Ren Yuan touched his bosom and threw out two more command flags. They turned into black fog and enveloped the two people once again. "He's stalling for time." In the black fog, Li Qing said in a low voice, "Although this person is in the assembled god stage, he doesn't seem to know much about Tao. Let's not waste any more time." Lightning flashed within the black fog once again, and Xianxia's angry roars could be heard from time to time. A moment later, the black fog dispersed, revealing Xianxia sitting cross-legged with black fog swirling around his face. Ren Yuan's complexion changed. He reached his hand into his bosom, but didn't take out the command flag. Li Qing looked at Ren Yuan and slowly walked towards him. Suddenly she stopped and her pupils shrank. A figure shrouded in a black robe appeared out of nowhere and stood quietly behind Ren Yuan. The black-robed man stood there quietly. His black robe tightly wrapped around his entire body, and his face was hidden under a cloud of black fog. His body did not emit any aura, but she felt an extreme sense of danger. "Another one." Xianxia stood up. The black fog on his face had disappeared. He looked at the black-robed man from afar and shouted, "Who are you?" "Master." Looking back at the black-robed man, Ren Yuan was excited. He pointed at Li Qing and Xianxia and said, "Kill them. I want to devour their souls." Xianxia held his sword and sneered, "Then let's see if you have the ability." Li Mu followed the paper crane and ran all the way. Soon they left the county and came to a wilderness outside the city. Ren Yuan's body still had soul power that had not been refined. By following the paper crane they could find Ren Yuan and Li Qing. Li Mu saw Ren Yuan at a glance. He seemed to be injured and was meditating on the ground. Li Qing and Xianxia were fighting with a figure shrouded in a black robe. Although it was called a battle, it was more like a game. Under Li Qing and Xianxia's all-out attacks, the black-robed man only dodged. The swords in their hands could not even touch the corner of his clothes. Xianxia retreated to the side, panting. After a short exchange, he already knew that they were far from being a match for this person. A trace of ruthlessness appeared in his eyes. He crossed his fingers and formed a hand seal. After doing all this, the magic power in his body was exhausted, and he collapsed to the ground. The power of heaven and earth fluctuated, and the image of an old man appeared in front of Xianxia. The old man had white hair and a white beard. He wore a loose Taoist robe. After forming a sword seal with one hand, he waved his hand at the black-robed man, and an invisible sword chi slashed out. Clang! The black-robed man crossed his arms and resisted the invisible sword chi. His body retreated more than 10 feet before stopping. His sleeves were torn apart, and a faint blood stain appeared on his withered arms, which were exposed to the air, but it quickly disappeared. The black-robed man stood where he was and said in a hoarse voice, "The Fulu School's foundation is indeed deep. This Abhijna has already touched the edge of Taoist techniques." Xianxia's expression was ugly. His heart had already sunk. This Abhijna was his strongest killing move. It was enough to kill a third-realm demonic ghost. However, the heretical cultivation in front of him had already reached the fourth realm. The gap in magic power could not be bridged even by Taoist techniques. Seeing that Xianxia's Abhijna had no effect, Li Qing made a prompt decision. She grabbed Xianxia's clothes by the back of his neck and retreated in an instant. When she reached Li Mu's side, she threw him a divine travel talisman and said quickly, "Let's go." Li Mu did not hesitate to stick the divine travel talisman on his body. At the same time, he raised his magic power to the limit and quickly fled in the direction they had come from with Li Qing. If it was a soul condensation or spirit condensation heretical cultivation, Li Mu could catch him off guard and give him a taste of thunder. However, the other's cultivation had already reached the middle realm. There was no other way but to run. Under normal circumstances, even if these heretical cultivation cultivators were full of evil, they would not easily kill cultivators of the Yamen. Whether it was the sects behind them or the imperial court, they were not people that these loose cultivators could offend. Li Mu stuck the divine travel talisman on his body. As he ran he looked back. This glance made his heart skip a beat. His heart, which had just calmed down, was raised again. He saw that the black-robed man carrying Ren Yuan was actually chasing closely behind them. His speed was even faster than when they were using the divine travel talisman. At this speed they would probably be caught before they could run back to the city. Li Mu made a prompt decision and said in a low voice, "This won't do. Split up and run." With his back to Li Qing he formed a seal with his hand. With a boom, a bolt of thunder fell from the sky and struck the black-robed man in front of him. Although this attack did not hit him, it did stop his body. In this short pause, the three people in front of him had already fled in two different directions. The black-robed man did not think for long and chose a direction to pursue. Li Qing felt that the black-robed man's aura had disappeared. Her expression changed. She threw down Hanjia and said, "Go back to the Yamen first." After saying this, she turned around and chased in the direction that Li Mu disappeared. Li Mu, who was running at high speed, felt the aura behind him quickly approaching. He used all of his Fa to increase his speed. After deciding to split up, he did not give Li Qing a chance to choose. He turned around and ran in a direction far away from the city. The black-robed man chasing after him was also within Li Mu's expectations. Even a transcendent realm heretical cultivation would not dare to be presumptuous in the city. Li Qing and the others fled into the city, but Li Mu was far away from the city. As long as this heretical cultivation was not stupid, he should know who to chase. Of course, the current Li Mu was still not a match for a transcendent realm heretical cultivation cultivator. Therefore he chose to run in the direction of the Gulf of Clearwater. This place was not far away from the Gulf of Clearwater. Li Mu was confident that he could reach Su He before the black-robed man caught up to him. On the other side of the Gulf of Clearwater was a cliff. Ren Yuan, who was being carried by the black-robed man, looked at Li Mu, who was about to reach the bottom of the cliff, and said mockingly, "There's no road ahead. Where can you run to?" Li Mu stopped and stood by the river. Ren Yuan walked over with a cold smile. Just as he took a step, he suddenly felt his whole body turn cold. A cold wind blew from the ground. Unknowingly, a white fog appeared on the surface of the water in front of him. The fog spread very quickly and soon covered a radius of several hundred feet. It was impossible to see anything within a 3-meter radius. Su He's figure appeared beside Li Mu. She looked in the direction of the black-robed man and asked, "What's going on?" "We ran into a transcendent realm heretical cultivation cultivator. It wasn't easy for us to escape here." Li Mu explained and asked directly, "A transcendent realm cultivator. Can you beat him?" As soon as he finished speaking, Su He's figure disappeared. Chapter 74. Ren Yuan stood beside the black-robed man and asked with a frown, "Where did this white fog come from?" The black-robed man did not speak, but suddenly turned his body sideways. In the fog, a white palm that was attacking his back missed. The black-robed man said with a hoarse voice, "So it's a ghost." A woman's cold snort came from the fog. "You're the ghost, your whole family are ghosts." Just as she finished speaking, countless green threads suddenly shot out from the white fog. They were extremely fast, like steel needles, piercing towards the black-robed man and Ren Yuan. The black-robed man waved his sleeves and the black robe became as hard as iron. The green threads could not penetrate it and rolled back. The black-robed man flicked his finger and a ball of flame appeared out of thin air. When it touched the green threads, it immediately burned. True Samadhi fire. A cry of surprise came from the white fog. The hair suddenly broke and did not let the flames continue to spread. In the next moment, Su He's figure flew out. 2 bone swords appeared in her hands and she stabbed towards the black-robed man's head. The black-robed man's left hand formed a seal and the middle finger and index finger of his right hand came together in the shape of a sword. Suddenly, 3 feet of white light shot out from the tip of his finger. He used his finger as a sword and faced Su He's bone swords. The white light was extremely sharp. After a few collisions with the bone swords, a few cracks appeared on the 2 bone swords. The black-robed man played it down from the beginning. Su He's expression became extremely serious. She put away the bone swords and retreated into the white fog. The white fog became thicker and thicker. 1 step away, nothing could be seen clearly. Li Mu stood where he was and only saw the white fog in front of him rolling violently. Occasionally, the sound of metal clashing could be heard, as well as waves of powerful mana fluctuations. After a while, the fog in front of him suddenly disappeared. Li Mu saw the black-robed man and Su He's palm collide. The black-robed man's body swayed and Su He's figure flew back. After landing she kept retreating. Li Mu hurriedly went forward to support her, asking, "Are you okay?" Suhi looked up at the black-robed man and her expression became unprecedentedly serious. She said in a low voice, "He's not an ordinary transcendent. He's much stronger than that monk and has many abilities to restrain me." Li Mu did not expect this heretical cultivation to be so powerful. His expression changed. He asked, "What do we do?" "I'm a soul, so I'll be restrained by him." Suhi thought for a moment and said, "Let me borrow your body." Li Mu was stunned for a moment and asked, "How do I borrow it?" As soon as he finished speaking, he saw Suhi's figure move and directly enter his body. At the same time, Suhi's voice sounded in his mind, "Give your body to me first. Don't resist." Only then did Li Mu realize that he had been possessed by Suhi. Ghosts were spiritual bodies. Those with high cultivation did not fear the seven souls of humans. They could invade a person's body and control their actions. This was what people often called ghost possession. However, unlike ordinary ghost possession, Suhi had only entered his body in order to borrow his body to unleash a remarkable ability that she, as a spirit, could not unleash. After being possessed by Suhi, other than feeling a little strange, Li Mu did not feel any other discomfort. On the contrary, he had never felt that he was as strong as he was now. Because she did not possess Li Mu's body but shared it. She could borrow Li Mu's body, and Li Mu could also borrow her spiritual power. Li Mu could clearly feel the surging dermic powers in his body. If the lizard spirit and the zombie appeared before him again, he would be able to kill them easily with just a thought. However, at this moment he could not fight with Suhi for control of his body. His consciousness returned to his mind and he completely handed over his body to Suhi. This feeling was very strange. He was clearly awake, but he felt like a bystander watching his body perform actions that he had never thought of doing. Suhi controlled Li Mu's body and formed a complicated seal. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning fell from the top of the black-robed man's head. She was a soul body. Even if she cultivated Taoist techniques, she still needed to borrow Li Mu's body to release these orthodox techniques that could restrain demons and ghosts. The lightning was extremely fast. The black-robed man did not dodge, but after the lightning fell, his body did not change at all. However, a tree in the distance suddenly exploded, emitting black smoke. Substitute. Li Mu watched with a heavy heart. The difference between the middle realm and the lower realm was like heaven and earth. They were two completely different realms. The lower realm's spiritual power was weak. Other than Fulu and formations, one could only use some basic techniques. However, after reaching the middle realm, one could cultivate all kinds of mystical Taoist techniques. Treading on water, riding on fire, riding on water, riding on wind, swallowing blades and spitting flames, concealment, and when one was attacked, one could even use substitute techniques to deflect the damage. The gap between the upper and lower realms was almost impossible to bridge. The lightning technique missed. Suhi held Bai in her hand and flew forward to fight the black-robed man. Her bone sword was a ghost item. Cultivators in the divinity realm had all kinds of Taoist techniques to slay demons and ghosts. They were very effective against ghosts. Bai was a proper immortal treasure, so it could prevent her from being restrained by immortal treasures. However, whether it was Taoist techniques, or close combat, the black-robed man was at ease. It was obvious that he still had a lot of energy left. This made Li Mu wonder if he was really in the divinity realm. Perhaps his cultivation was even higher. After a short exchange, Li Mu's body, which was controlled by Suhi, was once again forced to retreat. Li Mu's shoulder was bleeding. He had been accidentally injured by the black-robed man's sword chi. If Suhi had not retreated, his arm would have followed in Jianghu's footsteps. At the same time, Suhi's voice rang out in Li Mu's mind again. Although this person's cultivation is in the divinity realm, he is definitely not a divinity cultivator. Perhaps he is only a step away from the creation realm. Or perhaps he was originally in the fifth creation realm, but his cultivation level has dropped. We cannot defeat this person. I can only do my best to protect you. Li Mu understood what Suhi meant. Suhi could not defeat the black-robed man, but the other party could not win either. A battle of this level could not be easily decided in a short period of time. And this black-robed man from the start was only defending when he fought Li Qing and Xianxia. Later on, although he chased after Li Mu, he did not use any Taoist techniques. When he fought with Suhi, he was also only defending and did not take the initiative to attack. Li Mu could not guess what this person was thinking, just like how he could not see his face under the black robe. He used his all-seeing eye with his current dermic powers. He could see that Ren Yuan was surrounded by resentment and evil aura, while the black-robed man was as calm as a pool of water. There were no ripples in the old well, but it was bottomless. Li Mu was even more shocked. The dermic powers in his body were Su He's dermic powers. Although Li Mu could not borrow all of it, it was enough to make his abilities infinitely close to the fourth realm. Even so, he could not see through this black-robed man. Wait. Li Mu was suddenly stunned. The dermic powers that he could use now were no weaker than the third realm of the congregate realm. If Su He let go of her dermic powers and let Li Mu use them, wouldn't his current cultivation be at the fourth realm of the divinity realm? Wouldn't he not be much weaker than the black-robed man? A thought flashed through Li Mu's mind. He suddenly had a bold idea. His greatest flaw now was that his cultivation was too shallow and his dermic powers were insufficient. He could not use those powerful Taoist techniques. He wondered what it would be like to use Taoist techniques at the fourth realm of cultivation. Would he be able to use those Taoist techniques that he could not use because of his lack of cultivation in the past? No matter how powerful that black-robed man was, he was only at the fourth realm. When he only had the spirit-refining realm dermic powers, this black-robed man could crush him with one finger. Li Mu could only accept it. After being possessed by Su He, he also had the cultivation of the fourth realm. If he could use Su He's dermic powers, he would let this black-robed man know what true cruelty was. Chapter 75. In order to use Su He's spiritual power, she had to completely let go of her mind. Li Mu did not know how to send a voice transmission to Su He. He said directly, "Sister Su, release all your spiritual power. I will control the body." Su He asked, "What are you trying to do?" "You will know in a while." After all, he had not tried it before. Li Mu was not very confident. He said, "If the situation is not right, you can take back control of the body." Su He did not reply, but Li Mu felt that he had regained control of the body. At the same time, he could control the vast spiritual power in his body. He looked at the black-robed man and formed the 6 Ding Jade Maiden seal. He said silently, "Descend." Rumble. Li Mu heard a roar. Countless bolts of lightning descended from the black-robed man's head. Most of the thunderbolts were white, but there were also a few purple thunderbolts mixed in. In the blink of an eye, the black-robed man was submerged. Dust flew everywhere on the ground, and the thunderbolts blasted out a large charred pit. Ren Yuan was sent flying by the aftermath and fainted. The lightning dissipated. At the bottom of the pit, the black-robed man stood up shakily. The black robe on his body had been reduced to strips of cloth, sticking to his body. Some parts were still burning. A ball of black fog exploded from his body, completely enveloping his body. Only then did the lightning and fire on his body gradually dissipate. Li Mu could clearly feel that after one attack, the black-robed man's aura had weakened significantly. He changed his hand seal and said silently, "Army." Clang. The Bai sword was automatically unsheathed. It turned into a stream of light and instantly appeared above the black fog. The sword hummed and countless sword radiances intersected in the air, slashing towards the ball of black fog. With Li Mu's cultivation of the 3 spirits, he could only barely control the Bai sword from a distance. It was extremely slow and could not be maintained for long. However, Su He's mana was more than 1,000 times more profound than his. At this moment, Li Mu controlled his sword with his will. He controlled his sword from a distance and streaks of sharp sword chi slashed into the black fog. The sound of metal clashing could be heard from the black fog. A moment later, the black fog dispersed, and the figure of the black-robed man appeared again. His clothes were ragged, and although he looked a little disheveled, when the sword chi slashed on his body, it only caused sparks to fly. It couldn't hurt him at all. Chi restriction. Li Mu's expression froze. He finally realized how difficult it was to deal with this black-robed man. The chi restriction technique was also a profound Taoist divine ability. After mastering it, one's physical body would be able to restrict water, fire, evil, and ghosts. If one cultivated it to a high level, they would be invulnerable to Dharma treasures. This physical divine ability was comparable to the golden body of the Buddhists. However, the chi restriction technique was the same as the body substitution technique. Even in the middle realm, it was a relatively powerful technique. It was difficult for ordinary cultivators to learn it. This little ability is still not enough. The black-robed man stood there, letting the sword chi slash at him. Although his voice was hoarse, it was quite calm. He didn't even have the intention to attack Li Mu. He just stood there quietly as if he wanted to test what other abilities he had. 2 of the 9 syllables mantra had been used. Li Mu hadn't mastered the 3rd fighting formula yet, so he couldn't use it rashly at this moment. He looked at the black-robed man and the spell in his hands changed again. He chanted in a low voice, "Heaven and earth are boundless, borrow the power of the universe. The power is born from the heart and it grows endlessly. Heavenly Lord Tai as the law commands." When the last word was chanted, Li Mu was slightly stunned. In the past he couldn't finish the incantation, but this time he actually finished it successfully. At the same time he suddenly had a mysterious feeling in his heart. Li Mu stretched out his hand and waved. The Bai sword flew back and floated above his head. Clang. After the sound of the sword, the Bai sword split into 2, 2 into 4, 4 into 8. In the blink of an eye, it had turned into a sky full of sword shadows, neatly arranged behind Li Mu. Behind Li Mu, rows of swords flickered. Each of the swords exuded a terrifying power. This was not Li Mu's mana, but the power of heaven and earth. After Li Mu came back to his senses, he looked at the black-robed man, smiled and asked, "Is it enough? Go." He stretched out his hand, and the countless sword shadows immediately shot toward the black-robed man with a power that could destroy heaven and earth. The black-robed man was no longer as calm as before. He turned into a ray of flowing light and retreated rapidly into the distance. However, no matter how fast he was, he couldn't be faster than the sword light. Countless sword light passed through his body, and his physical body was instantly destroyed. Just as his nascent spirit escaped, the sword shadows behind him arrived. He immediately followed in the footsteps of his physical body, turning into a ball of light and slowly dissipating. Is he dead? The battle ended in an instant. Li Mu stood where he was, lowering his head to look at his hand in a daze. The heretical cultivation of the transcendent realm that even Suhi could not defeat had been killed by him just like that. For a moment, Li Mu found it hard to believe. However, the surging mana in his body told him that he was no longer that soul-refining rookie, but had the strength to kill a transcendent realm cultivator. In the next moment, Suhi's figure walked out of Li Mu's body. Li Mu's body trembled, suddenly feeling extremely empty. Compared to now, he still preferred the feeling just now. Suhi looked at him, her eyes filled with deep meaning. She asked, "Just how many secrets do you have?" Li Mu smiled embarrassedly and said, "I'll tell you slowly in the future." If there was anyone in this world that Li Mu could trust, she was definitely one of them. Suhi did not pursue the matter. She looked in the direction where the black-robed man had been killed and frowned. She said, "That black-robed man was stronger than I imagined. If he was just an ordinary transcendent realm cultivator, he would have died under your first lightning strike." Li Mu asked, "Was he in the manifestation realm?" Suhi glanced at him and said, "After the middle 3 realms, each realm is a different heaven. If he was in the manifestation realm, our souls would have been scattered long ago." She looked at the place where the black-robed man's body and soul had dissipated and said, "Now that I think about it, even if he was not in the manifestation realm, he should have been just one step away. Even if I controlled your body, I would not have been able to defeat him. If he had used his full strength, you would have died and my soul would have been scattered. This time we were truly friends in life and death." Li Mu smiled and said, "No matter what realm he was in, he's already dead." Suhi thought for a moment and said, "There's something else that's very strange." Li Mu asked, "What is it?" Suhi said, "Your last strike just now, although it was powerful and could have destroyed his body in an instant, it should not have been able to destroy his soul." Although Suhi still had doubts, they had seen with their own eyes that the black-robed man had been completely reduced to ashes under Li Mu's 10,000 sword shadows. This could not have been fake. Li Mu had other things on his mind. He looked at Suhi and said, "Sister Su, try possessing my body again." Suhi looked up at him and asked, "The heretical cultivation is already dead. What else do you want?" Li Mu said, "I still want to try a strike and I need to borrow your mana." Suhi did not say anything. She took a step forward and re-entered Li Mu's body. Once again he felt the majestic mana surging in his body. Li Mu slowly closed his eyes and formed a seal with his hands. He said quietly, "Dao Ken." Just as he said these 2 words, Li Mu suddenly felt that his body was empty. Suhi's figure appeared in front of him again. She looked at him with a face full of fear and asked, "What kind of strike is this?" Li Mu was surprised. "What's wrong?" Suhi patted her full chest and said with lingering fear, "If you had continued reciting just now, my soul would have dispersed directly." Li Mu's expression changed slightly. It seemed that even though he had cultivated to the 4th level, he still could not control the power of the Tao Te Ching. He dismissed the idea of trying and said, "Sorry, I almost harmed you." Suhi's eyes were still full of shock. She said in disbelief, "How can there be a strike that even a 4th-level cultivator cannot perform? If this technique is successfully activated, who knows how powerful it will be? If you forcefully activate it, you will definitely suffer a backlash. You must not try it so easily in the future." Li Mu nodded and said, "I know." Suhi suppressed the throbbing in her heart. She looked at the unconscious Ren Yuan and asked, "How should we deal with this person?" Li Mu thought for a while and said, "First destroy his cultivation, then bring him back to the Yamen." Suhi waved her hand and a white light shot into Ren Yuan's dantian. She said, "I've already destroyed his mana. Let's go, I'll send you away." Li Mu carried the unconscious Ren Yuan and walked out of the bay of clear water with Suhi. Dozens of miles away in a secluded valley in the mountains, a shadow appeared out of thin air. Under the black robe, the shadow smiled and said, "Interesting." Chapter 76. At the shore of the Bay of Clear Water, Li Mu carried the unconscious Ren Yuan and said to Suhi, "Why don't you come back with me? I can cook for you every day and you don't have to be here alone." He made this suggestion not because he had any thoughts about Suhi, but because after they merged, Li Mu could not stop thinking about that powerful strength. Although Li Mu was only at the 1st realm, after being possessed by Suhi who was at the 4th realm, he could unleash strength far surpassing that of a 4th realm cultivator. And Suhi, as a soul after possessing a body, could also use the spells of the righteous path that she could not use before. The two of them together could complement each other's strengths and complement each other's weaknesses. Suhi shook her head but did not explain anything. She said, "I can't leave here. Just remember to come and see me often." Li Mu was somewhat disappointed, but he did not force her. After bidding farewell to her, he walked out of the Bay of Clear Water. After walking for a quarter of an hour, a figure flew over from the front. When Li Qing saw him, she immediately asked, "Are you all right?" Li Mu shook his head. "I'm fine." Li Qing sighed in relief then asked, "Where's the heretical cultivation?" "That." Li Mu threw Ren Yuan to the ground and said, "When he was chasing me, a righteous cultivator happened to pass by and killed that heretical cultivation, saving me." Li Qing looked at him and asked, "Where is that senior?" Li Mu pointed in a direction and said, "He just left." The black-robed man was killed and Ren Yuan was also captured. Li Qing sighed in relief, but her expression turned cold. She looked at Li Mu and asked, "Who told you to act on your own just now?" Li Mu opened his mouth. "I." Before he could think of an answer, several figures appeared behind them and quickly arrived beside them. Constable Zhou led the others and asked nervously, "What about the heretical cultivation?" "He was killed by a senior who was passing by." Li Mu pointed at Ren Yuan on the ground and said, "This person is the murderer of the hunter father and son. His cultivation has already been crippled by that senior. Within 2 months he had consecutively crossed the soul refining and soul condensation stages. I'm afraid that the innocent people who died in his hands were not only the hunter father and son," Constable Zhou said with a sullen face. "Take him back to the Yamen first and interrogate him carefully." After arranging everything, he looked at Li Mu and asked, "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." Li Mu smiled and said, "It's all thanks to that senior." Li Mu did not intend to tell Constable Zhou the truth about Suhi, but he did not ask. The heretical cultivation did not walk the right path and defied the heavens. Everyone had the right to punish them. Although Li Mu's reason was a bit coincidental, he had to believe it. Otherwise, he could not explain how Li Mu, with his insignificant cultivation, could escape from the hands of that heretical cultivation practitioner with the divine ability. There were not many cultivators in the Xianxia County government to begin with, and there was not a single one in the divine ability realm. Jianghu County magistrates were not present, and the other 2 cultivators apart from Li Qing and Xianxia had been seconded to Zhou County 3 months ago. They could not spare any more manpower. After receiving the news, Constable Zhou contacted several other cultivators in the county in the shortest time possible and rushed over. He had been prepared for a fierce battle, but he did not expect it to end so easily. In the county Yamen, Old Wang finished recording and looked at Li Mu. He clicked his tongue and said, "You're really lucky to be able to escape from a heretical cultivation practitioner of the divine ability realm." Li Mu said, "Maybe my luck is better." Old Wang covered his mouth and coughed a few times. He said, "That's true. Life is really unpredictable. However, you can escape one trouble but you can't escape the other. Li Mu was surprised. What other trouble do I have? Old Wang glanced outside. Li Mu looked over and saw Li Qing standing there with her sword in her arms. Her face was cold like a piece of thousand-year-old ice. On the way back she did not say a word to Li Mu. Li Mu knew that she was angry. He walked out of the duty room and came to Li Qing. He lowered his head and said, "Boss, I was wrong." Li Qing did not look at him. She said coldly, "What did you do wrong?" Li Mu said honestly, "I shouldn't have acted on my own and run away without your permission." Li Qing finally looked at him, her voice still cold. "Do you think that just because you've condensed 3 souls, you're very powerful and can fight a heretical cultivation practitioner of the divine ability realm?" Li Mu shook his head. "No." Li Qing's voice was filled with anger. "Then why did you lure him away?" Li Mu did not answer directly. Instead he asked, "If I were the boss, what would you do?" Li Qing's lips moved. She found that she could not refute Li Mu. She said coldly, "Are you the boss or am I the boss? When did it become your turn to ask me?" Li Mu sighed. "You are." Li Si was right about one thing. Fairies were also women. Since they were women, they had the characteristics of women. For example, when they realized that they could not be reasoned with, they would choose to be unreasonable. He looked up at Li Qing and said, "In the situation at that time, if we ran away together, he would have caught up before we could reach the county. If we ran together, only death would await us. If we ran separately, the other side would have a chance to live. I think that my choice was not wrong." Li Qing asked, "So you gave the chance to me?" Li Mu looked into her eyes and said in a tone that was neither servile nor overbearing, "My life was saved by you, boss. My cultivation was introduced to me by you. Even the Bai sword was given to me by you. If I run away without caring about you when I'm in danger, am I still a human?" Li Qing met his gaze. Li Mu did not back down at all. Li Qing looked into Li Mu's eyes and finally looked away. She said, "In the future, without my permission, you are not allowed to act on your own. Otherwise, I won't have you as my subordinate." This meant that today's matter was over. Li Mu let out a sigh of relief and said seriously, "I will listen to the boss in the future. If the boss tells me to go east, I will not go west. If the boss tells me to beat a dog, I will not beat a chicken. Bah." Hanja spat in the distance and scolded angrily, "Shameless." Li Qing went to interrogate Ren Yuan. Li Mu hummed a little tune. It seemed that women still liked to listen to good music, even fairies were no exception. He hummed a few words and suddenly felt something. He looked to the other side and found that Hanja was standing there, looking at him with disdain. Hanja looked at Li Mu in the distance and said disdainfully, "Are you still a man to bow and scrape to a woman?" If it was yesterday, Li Mu might have felt a little guilty when he heard Hanja ask this. Now he could stand there with his back straight and tell him loudly that he was a man, a real man. Li Mu smiled and said, "A real man knows when to yield and when to stand tall. A man who only knows how to stretch his neck forward is called a boorish man." Hanja knew that Li Mu was mocking him for almost being caught by the cat demon. He snorted and said, "Today you saved me once. In the future I will save you once. Then we can call it even." Li Mu was too lazy to waste time with Hanja. He still had to go to the torture room and interrogate Ren Yuan about the black-robed man. Hanja stood in the corridor and said gloomily, "In terms of strength and status, which part of me is inferior to him? Why does Miss Qing treat him so well? That female shopkeeper of the Union Pavilion also flirted with him." Old Wang poked his head out of the window and said, "Although you are stronger than him and have a higher status than him, there is one thing that you can't compare to him." Hanja turned his head to look at Old Wang and said unhappily, "What is it?" Old Wang said, "You are not as good-looking as him." Hanja snorted and said disdainfully, "Shallow?" Old Wang shook his head and retracted his head. He sighed and said, "These kids nowadays they have cultivated until they are stupid. When it comes to girls, how can they not yield and coax them a little? Do you think that by standing there in a daze, girls will throw themselves at you? Do you think you are Li Si?" Hanja returned to the torture room gloomily. He saw one of his subordinates and waved at him. The constable quickly ran over and asked, "Boss, what's the matter?" Hanja said, "I want to ask you something. Answer honestly." The constable immediately said, "Boss, please ask. I will answer honestly." Hanja touched his chin and asked, "Me or Li Mu, who is better looking?" "Li Mu?" The constable was stunned. He thought about Li Mu and then looked at Hanja. He shook his head and said, "Boss, don't joke around. Chapter 77. When Li Mu and Li Qing walked out of the torture chamber, Hanja was chasing one of his subordinates. Li Mu was not in the mood to pay attention to Hanja. After Ren Yuan's cultivation was crippled by Su He, he was no different from an ordinary person. And ordinary people had no secrets under the special interrogation of the county yamen. The reason for Ren Yuan's cultivation was no different from what shopkeeper Ren had said. 2 months ago when he went out to play he met a Taoist priest. The Taoist priest felt his bone structure and asked about his birth characters. Seeing that Ren Yuan had a rare wood elemental body, he had the idea of taking him in as a disciple. Ren Yuan did not believe it at first, but after the Taoist priest showed him some magical Taoist techniques, he immediately knelt down and kowtowed to take him in as a disciple. The Taoist priest was very attentive to Ren Yuan's cultivation. He often brought Ren Yuan deep into the mountains to kill some wisdom-opening realm or embryonic transformation realm demons to extract their souls. As a result, Ren Yuan condensed 7 souls in half a month. Li Mu's cultivation speed was not slow, but after 2 months he had only condensed 3 souls. He was far from Ren Yuan's level. After condensing the souls, the Taoist priest disappeared for a period of time. During this period, Ren Yuan used the magic weapon given to him by the Taoist priest, as well as the evil techniques that the priest had taught him, to kill many demons and extract their souls for cultivation. In just a month he had already refined 2 of the 3 souls. This reminded Li Mu of the yellow rat couple. Judging from the time of Ren Yuan's crimes, the injury of the yellow rat's wife was most likely caused by Ren Yuan. After refining 2 souls, the nearby demons were either killed by him or fled far away. Ren Yuan did not have a new source of souls to replenish. Finally he changed his target from demons to humans. At first his targets were only passers-by in Xianxia County. After killing them and extracting their souls, he threw them deep into the mountains and valleys. Where there were no traces of humans, wild beasts would eat the corpses. As his cultivation increased, he became bolder and bolder. In the end he reached out to the people nearby. In order not to arouse the suspicion of the government, he first took the souls of the hunter father and son, and then ordered the demon cat raised by the family to suck their essence and blood, creating the illusion that the demon was harming people. If it weren't for the heaven's eye that could see through people's 7 spirits, and if old Wang didn't happen to know that there was such a kind of fulu, the county government probably wouldn't have suspected him. Ren Yuan had cultivated to such a level in such a short period of time, yet more than 10 innocent people had died in his hands. This made Li Mu sigh in his heart. It was not that there were no shortcuts to cultivation. Although the shortcuts were fast, it was easy to lose one's humanity if one kept thinking about shortcuts. The case had been closed. Old Wang was sorting out the case files related to the case in the guard room. When the Jianghu County magistrates came back, they would submit the files to the county town. After the county magistrates approved, Ren Yuan would definitely end up like Zhao Yong, dead in body and soul. Thinking about how Zhao Yong was chosen by the county magistrates because of the so-called fire elemental body, he finally did such an outrageous thing. If it weren't for the wood elemental body, Ren Yuan would never have come into contact with cultivation and would not have ended up like this in the end. Li Mu even thought of himself. However, he was different from Zhao Yong and Ren Yuan. Although he had a pure yang body, he did not do anything to harm people. However, he still suffered an unexpected disaster. He began to understand what Lu Hanyan meant when she said that he was a jinx. This kind of special body bestowed by the heavens was both a blessing and a curse for them. It was the same for the people around them. Old Wang shook his head and said, "Things in the world have always been like this. Blessings and misfortunes, misfortunes and blessings. Who can say for sure?" Li Mu sighed and slowly walked out of Old Wang's guard room. When he walked into the courtyard he suddenly remembered something. If those people were all killed by Ren Yuan, then the black-robed man who was Ren Yuan's master, was also guilty in the entire matter, but his crime did not warrant death. After he initiated Ren Yuan's cultivation, he never appeared again. The black-robed man only killed a few demons. Even if those demons did not commit any crimes or harm people's lives, the laws of the Great Zhou protected the people of the Great Zhou. They would never destroy someone's body and soul just because they killed a few more demons. Even if he had already stepped onto the path of cultivation and became an immortal master, in the eyes of ordinary people, Li Mu had never felt that he was high above and could casually take the lives of others. What if the black-robed man did not harm anyone? Thinking of this, Li Mu's heart suddenly throbbed inexplicably. This was a throbbing that he did not feel when he killed the dwarf and the lizard spirit. Following the throbbing of his heart, the mana in his body also became chaotic. Feeling the abnormal mana ripples in the courtyard, Hanja poked his head out of the guard room. Li Qing quickly walked out of the room. When she discovered the source of the mana ripples, her figure instantly appeared beside Li Mu. She asked worriedly, "What's wrong?" Li Mu shook his head. The throbbing in his heart became even more intense and the mana ripples in his body became even more intense. Hanja ran over and his expression changed. He said, "An inner demon." Li Qing's expression was extremely serious. She looked seriously at Li Mu and asked, "What are you thinking about?" Li Mu silently chanted the heart-cleansing mantra and the throbbing in his heart lessened greatly. He said in a low voice, "That black-robed man Renyuan's master, he did not kill anyone, that's it?" Hanja looked at him in surprise and said, "You wouldn't have developed an inner demon because of this, would you?" Li Mu, "If he did not harm anyone then that senior killed someone who should not have been killed. Just look at the matter of Renyuan. Although he was at fault he did not deserve to die." Hanja looked at him with a strange gaze and said, "Kid, you are still too young. Do you know why the orthodox disciples of the six sects are not allowed to kill demons and extract their souls without permission?" "What? Desire?" Hanja looked at him and said, "If one's desire is moved, there is only the difference between 0 and countless times. What are those demons that have taken human form? For Renyuan's cultivation, the black-robed man could kill them without the slightest scruple. Do you think that after cultivating to the transcendent realm, he has not killed anyone himself? If he did not have the heart to harm others, why would he protect him and why would he chase after us?" Li Mu's heart palpitations slowly calmed down and his mana also calmed down. Hanja continued, "There is no end to desire. Cultivators who kill demons to extract their souls and refine their souls will eventually walk on two paths. The first is to exterminate demons and devils. They will search for demons that have done all kinds of evil and bring harm to the human world, kill them and extract their souls. The second is to be like Renyuan, who has taken a wrong path and completely fallen into the evil path. He will become an evil cultivator and harm the human world." Hanja patted Li Mu's shoulder and sighed, "Although you have not seen much, your temperament is not bad. Otherwise you would not have developed such an inner demon. The job of constable is very suitable for you. That black-robed man was able to cultivate Renyuan, he must be a heretical cultivation cultivator himself. He deserved to die, so there is no need to pity him. In the process of cultivation the inner demon is everywhere. If you cannot subdue it, your future cultivation will be more difficult and you may even fall into the evil path." Li Qing comforted Li Mu and said, "Come back to the duty room with me, I will help you calm your mana." Hanja immediately said, "Miss Qing, you should rest. Let me calm him down." "My mana has already recovered." Li Qing shook her head and said, "He is my subordinate, let me do it myself." Seeing Li Qing and Li Mu walk into the duty room, Hanja's face was filled with annoyance. After a moment, his eyes turned and he came to another room. Constable Zhou was reviewing files. He raised his head and asked, "Constable Han, is there anything I can help you with?" Hanja walked in front of him and said, "Constable Zhou, Li Mu has also stepped into cultivation. According to the usual practice, can he be promoted to constable?" In the county government, Constable Zhou was the chief constable, Hanja and Li Qing were sub-constables. Once a constable was promoted to a sub-constable, he would be like Hanja, a small leader with 3 constables under his command. Constable Zhou looked at him and said in surprise, "Why did you suddenly mention this?" Hanja smiled and said, "I am thinking for Li Mu. If he is promoted to constable, his monthly salary will be higher." Constable Zhou thought for a moment and shook his head. "Li Mu has only been cultivating for a few days. At least wait until he condenses his soul." In the duty room, Li Mu and Li Qing's palms touched. After a while, Li Qing took back her hand. Li Mu said, "Thank you, Chief." Li Qing didn't stand on ceremony. She just looked at him and said, "The path of cultivation is extremely difficult. Inner demons often appear. You have to recite the mind-clearing formula you taught me often." Li Mu nodded and said, "I know." It was also the first time he had experienced the horror of inner demons. Li Mu only had a trace of doubt in his heart, but it was infinitely magnified and even affected his basic judgment. If it weren't for Hanja and Li Qing, Li Mu's cultivation in the future would be very difficult. At this time, Hanja came in from outside and threw a jade stone to Li Mu saying, "This is for you." Li Mu took the jade stone and asked, "What is this?" Hanja said, "In the past few months I have collected courage from killing demons. You saved me once. Take it as a return of the favor. Since Xianxia said so, Li Mu couldn't refuse. He took the jade stone and said, "Thank you, you are welcome." Xianxia's face showed a trace of pain. He gritted his teeth and waved his hand, telling Li Mu, "Cultivate well and try to condense your soul as soon as possible." Chapter 78. Pure soul power and courage were extremely attractive to cultivators. Cultivators in the soul refining and soul condensing realms could use them to quickly break through realms. High-level cultivators could also use them to strengthen their bodies, souls, and primordial spirits. Jade was a spiritual object that could be used to store soul power, courage, and even mana. It was also one of the materials for setting up formations. Li Mu still had 4 souls that had not been condensed. 2 of them were the following souls and the other 2 were the reverse souls. When refining fear and evil emotions, he needed a large amount of courage. This was also the reason why he did not reject Xianxia. After a fierce battle and almost being invaded by the heart demon, Li Mu spent the entire afternoon in the duty room to adjust his breathing. He only returned when the yamen was closed. Today was another day outside. He did not know what Wanwan ate for lunch. Li Mu walked on the street. From afar he saw Wanwan sitting on the steps of the door, playing happily with a puppy. The puppy circled around her. Every time Wanwan wanted to hug it, it would quickly run away. Occasionally people passing by would look at her with strange eyes. Li Mu guessed correctly. With this girl's personality, even if she really met a ghost, she would not think that way. This puppy was just a spiritual body. Perhaps it did not even know that it was dead. It was just the 7 souls that were naturally afraid of living people. Although it wanted to play with Wanwan, it did not dare to get close. Wanwan saw Li Mu and immediately stood up. She patted her butt and said happily, "Young master, you're back?" Li Mu asked, "Why are you here alone? Where's your young miss?" "Young miss is busy at the shop." Wanwan looked happily at Li Mu and said, "Young master, there's a puppy here. It's very fun." "Where's the puppy?" "It just ran away." Li Mu walked to the door and said, "Let's go in and cook first. We'll wait for your young miss to come back." After Lu Hanyin and Li Mu became familiar with each other, they often ate together. She didn't have any kitchen utensils at home, so she shared a set with Li Mu. If Li Mu came back early, Li Mu would cook. If Yunyan Pavilion wasn't busy, there would be a table full of steaming hot dishes by the time Li Mu came home. The 2 of them didn't seem to be neighbors. Instead, they seemed to be living together. After a tiring day, Li Mu planned to have a simple hot pot. Wanwan liked barbecue and hot pot the most. She was busy preparing the ingredients. After preparing the ingredients, Lu Hanyin still hadn't returned. She probably wouldn't come back for dinner. Li Mu wasn't worried that he wouldn't be able to finish the dishes. With Wanwan around, not even a single vegetable or bean sprout would be left. Wanwan squatted by the stove and waited for the water to boil. Li Mu walked into the study and waved at her. "Wanwan, come here." Wanwan glanced at the pot that was about to boil. She reluctantly ran over and asked, "Young master, is something the matter?" Innate spiritual eyes were the dream of cultivators. As one's cultivation increased, that pair of spiritual eyes would evolve into a terrifying innate ability. However, for the current Wanwan, it wasn't a good thing. The North County wasn't like the Middle County. Demons and ghosts were more common here. It was fine if ordinary people couldn't see them. However, if they could see them and attracted their attention, it would cause trouble. In the book that old Wang gave him, there was a method to temporarily block spiritual eyes. Li Mu looked at her and said, "Close your eyes." Wanwan froze for a moment, and a hint of red flashed across her little face. Then she obediently closed her eyes, tiptoed, and raised her head slightly. Li Mu made a few gestures with his right hand. He put his index finger and thumb together and used his mana. He gently wiped her eyes and said, "Okay, you can open them now." Wanwan opened her eyes in confusion and whispered, "But we haven't kissed yet." "Kiss what?" Lu Hanyin stood at the door. She looked at Wanwan, who was tiptoeing and raising her head. She then looked at Li Mu, who was opposite her, and asked suspiciously. Even when it was time to eat, Lu Hanyin's doubts were still not eliminated. She looked at Li Mu with a scrutinizing gaze for a long time. Wanwan put the cooked meat into Li Mu's and Lu Hanyin's bowls. As she did so, she whispered, "One for miss, one for me, one for sir, one for me, one for myself." Li Mu gave all the meat in his bowl to her. He shook his head and said, "I'll give it all to you. I like to eat tofu." Li Mu liked to eat meat roasted. He ate hot pot mainly for the vegetables. Lu Hanyin did the same as him. She gave all the meat in her bowl to Wanwan and fought with Li Mu for the cooked tofu in the pot. Seeing that Wanwan hadn't finished eating yet and was reaching for the pot with her chopsticks, Lu Hanyin couldn't help but remind her, eat less meat. Be careful that you don't become fat and can't get married in the future. Li Mu couldn't help but speak up for Wanwan, she's not like you. She's not eating like this for a day or two. She won't get fat. Lu Hanyin glanced at him, you're protecting her like this. If she can't get married in the future, will you be responsible? Li Mu was confused, isn't Wanwan getting married with you? Why can't she get married? Lu Hanyin looked at him and asked, why does Wanwan want to get married with me? Li Mu thought that Wanwan was Lu Hanyin's personal maidservant. When she got married, Wanwan should also sleep with her. As long as Lu Hanyin could get married, Wanwan could also get married. Now it seemed that Lu Hanyin didn't have this plan. In this way, between her and Li Qin, a certain balance in Li Mu's heart was about to tilt a little. He gave the last piece of tofu to Lu Hanyin and said, I thought you two would be together forever. I'm not Wanwan. I started saving up my dowry a few years ago. Lu Hanyin coldly snorted and said, isn't it good to be alone? Why should I get married? How do I know if he's after my money? Lu Hanyin's words were very reasonable. If a man married her, if it wasn't for her body, then it was for her money. Because she was really too rich. Lu Hanyin looked at Li Mu and suddenly asked, why do you think Wanwan and I will get married together? Li Mu couldn't tell her that it was because he had fantasized about it. He could only say, I guessed. Without waiting for Lu Hanyin to continue asking, he put down his chopsticks and said, I'm full. You can continue. Lu Hanyin looked at his back as he left and then looked at Wanwan who was immersed in eating. She suddenly said, Wanwan, how about I marry you to Li Mu in 2 years? Wanwan choked for a moment. She patted her chest and asked in surprise, Miss, really? Lu Hanyin looked at her in surprise and asked, you don't really want to marry Li Mu, do you? Why not? Wanwan lowered her head and said shyly, young master can cook so much delicious food, catch ghosts, fight demons and protect me. I'm willing to marry him. She didn't expect that her little maid would actually have such thoughts. Lu Hanyin put down her chopsticks and looked like she had nothing to live for. After Jianghu County magistrates submitted the file on Ren Yuan's case, they received the county governor's verdict in less than 3 days. In order to cultivate, Ren Yuan killed innocent people and extracted their souls. This was not tolerated by the heavenly Tao, so he was sentenced to be executed immediately. Ren Yuan's fate was within Li Mu's expectations. The imperial court had almost zero tolerance for such vicious acts. They killed whoever they caught. Even the 6th realm Dongshen heretical cultivation was killed because of this, not to mention Ren Yuan who had forcefully cultivated to the 3rd realm. On the day Ren Yuan was executed, Li Mu went to take a look. When the executioner's blade fell, besides the head falling to the ground, his 3 spiritual and 7 physical souls also dissipated in an instant. Shopkeeper Ren knelt on the ground and hugged Ren Yuan's headless corpse. Tears streamed down his face as he said sorrowfully, cultivating immortality. In the end he lost his life cultivation. What kind of immortality is this? Li Mu sighed softly, shook his head and left. The path of cultivation was never a smooth one. Old Wang was right. The weak were prey to the strong. This was the only law in the cultivation world. On this path, one had to fight against the heavens and oneself. If one was not careful, they would be invaded by their inner demons. One wrong step and they would be led astray and there would be no turning back. This path was full of temptations and dangers. Although Ren Yuan had a 5 elements constitution and was exceptionally talented, if he hadn't chosen this path and had chosen to be an ordinary person, perhaps he could have been a wealthy man for the rest of his life. He wouldn't have ended up like today with his head falling to the ground and his soul dissipating. When he returned home, Li Mu was still filled with emotions. He recalled his experiences in the past 3 months of cultivation. There were several times when he was in life-threatening danger. Luck played a large part in him being able to survive until now. However, it was impossible for him to have the luck to turn danger into safety every time. Li Mu even wondered if he should listen to Lu Hanyin and wait until he condensed the 7 souls and escaped the crisis of life and death. Then, he might as well stop being a constable and stop cultivating. What was wrong with marrying a wife like Lu Hanyin and living a peaceful and happy life? Li Mu looked at Lu Hanyin who was bringing the food to the table, and this thought in his heart became even stronger. With such a gentle and virtuous wife, what more could he ask for in life? If he could see this scene when he returned home every day, Lu Hanyin had been angry for several days because Li Mu had stolen Wanwan's heart. Seeing him standing there in a daze and staring at her without blinking, an inexplicable anger rose in her heart. She said angrily, "What are you looking at? Come and help me. If you look again I'll dig out your eyeballs." Li Mu was stunned. "Ah." Lu Hanyin slammed the plates on the table and said angrily, "What are you off for? Hurry up and bring the food. It's a break today and you don't have to go to the yamen. Why are you back so late? Don't you know there's someone waiting for you to eat at home?" Li Mu looked at Lu Hanyin and secretly swallowed a mouthful of saliva. If he could see this scene when he returned home every day, why should he marry a wife? He decided to cultivate properly. Chapter 79. 3 of the 7 spirits had already been condensed. In the next 3 months, as long as he condensed another spirit, Li Mu would be able to avoid the danger to his life. After thinking for a long time, Li Mu still decided to condense the 4th spirit, the seizing thief. The first spirit of the seizing thief was related to the immune system. A person who lost this spirit would fall sick very easily. Li Mu had the exorcism talisman. It could replace the seizing thief and prevent illness, but it was a temporary solution. If he didn't condense the seizing thief for too long, the exorcism talisman's effect would be minimal. The seizing thief was born from fear. Li Mu had absorbed quite a bit of fear from the demonic ghosts he had encountered before, but he was still far from condensing the spirit. He had also tried to use the method of telling ghost stories to induce fear in the tea house guests. However, the final result was the same as when he tried to induce grief in the audience. He couldn't induce fear in the guests. The reason was naturally that the fear was only directed at the scenes in their minds and not at Li Mu. If he wanted to condense the seizing thief, he had to find another method. When Li Mu arrived at the county yamen, he realized that Li Qing wasn't there. Xianxia and one of Hanji's constables were gambling. Old Wang was watching from the side. Li Mu patted Xianxia's shoulder from behind. Xianxia jumped up. When he turned around and saw that it was Li Mu, he patted his chest and heaved a sigh of relief. "It's you, Li Mu. I thought it was the boss. You scared me to death." Naturally, Li Mu didn't waste all his effort in inducing Xianxia's fear. The attraction of emotions had to be like this, face to face, and it had to be directed at Li Mu. However, after thinking for a long time, Li Mu couldn't think of any profession that could make it convenient to scare people. Since there was nothing he could use as a reference, he might as well create one himself. A thought flashed through Li Mu's mind. He suddenly had an idea. He was about to walk out of the duty room and go back to discuss it with Lu Hanyin. When he turned around, his vision suddenly went dark. It wasn't because he was dizzy, nor was it because the sky had darkened. It was because a figure was blocking the door of the duty room, almost completely blocking the door. This person was tall and abnormally fat. Qin Miao Miao, the daughter of the county minister whom Li Mu had met before, could be considered as a little bird in front of him. Li Mu thought for a moment and remembered that this person was called Wu Bo, one of the cultivators in the county government. However, 3 months ago he was seconded to participate in the suppression of the zombie disaster in Zhou County. Today he appeared in the government office again. "Get out of my way." Wu Bo squeezed in from the outside and rudely pushed Li Mu aside, asking, "Where's Junior Marshal Sister Li?" Xianxia put away the dice and said, "The boss is not here." Wu Bo's gaze swept across the room and then he swaggered out. After he left, Xianxia curled his lips and said, "Didn't Fei Bo go to the neighboring county to catch zombies? Why did he come back so soon?" "Shoo." The constable under Hanja gestured for him to keep quiet and said, "Keep your voice down. If he hears you call him that, you'll have to bear the consequences." "Do you think I'm afraid of him hearing it?" Xianxia lowered his voice and whispered, "How did he grow up like this? Even the pigs in my family are not as fat as him." Old Wang chuckled and said, "He grew up like this. It's not up to him." Xianxia looked surprised. "What do you mean? Ordinary people can't eat so much to become so fat." Old Wang adjusted to a comfortable sitting position and said, "But there's a kind of body constitution called the body of earth element. This kind of person's 5 elements are all earth, so it's easy for him to absorb the qi of the earth. That's why he grew up like this." Xianxia clicked his tongue and said, "What kind of stupid body constitution is this?" "It's not a stupid body constitution." Old Wang shook his head and said, "He is a little fat, but his cultivation speed is faster than that of ordinary people. Many cultivators yearn for such a physique. Don't be fooled by his fat body. In the county government, if County Magistrate Zhang doesn't use the imperial court's treasure, he is no match for him. Xianxia was stunned and asked, "Our boss can't beat him?" Old Wang nodded and asked, "Now you know how powerful this kind of body constitution is, right?" Xianxia looked down at his bulging belly and said to Old Wang, "I'm also quite fat. Do you think I have a powerful body constitution? Can I cultivate?" Old Wang smiled. "Go to bed early tonight. Everything is possible in your dream." Li Mu listened at the door. According to Old Wang, Xianxia should also have the body of earth element, which might be the reason why she was fat. Thinking of Zhao Yong's body of fire element, Li Mu seemed to understand why the county magistrate arranged such a marriage for him. The 5 elements promoted and restrained each other. Wood promoted fire, fire promoted earth, earth promoted gold, gold promoted water, water promoted wood. Zhao Yong had the body of fire element. If he married Xianxia, who had the body of earth element, it would be very beneficial for her. Only considering the body constitution and nothing else, they were indeed a match made in heaven. Just like Li Mu and Lu Hanyan. The difference was that if the body of fire element and the body of earth element were together, it would only benefit the latter. If Li Mu and Lu Hanyan were to cultivate together, it would be the true combination of yin and yang. It would be very beneficial for both of them. From Li Mu's experience in the past few months, although the body of 5 elements was rare, it was not to the extent of being scarce. First there was Zhao Yong, Ren Yuan, and then there was Wu Bo. The 3 of them had the same body constitution, but their fates were completely different. Rare body constitutions like theirs were very popular in Taoism. Some sects would even calculate the time and send disciples down the mountain to investigate if there were any newborns born nearby. If they happened to find a baby born at a special time, they would make an agreement with the baby's parents that when the baby was 5 or 6 years old, he would go up the mountain to cultivate. The child's family would also receive a lot of compensation. However, the attitude of the imperial court towards this was completely different. Although they would recruit a large number of cultivators every year, in order to maintain their rule and stability, the imperial court did not want too many cultivators to appear. Firstly, this would cause the local fixed population to lose. Secondly, cultivators were not under the jurisdiction of the imperial court and often did things that violated the rules and disturbed social stability. The more cultivators there were, the more it was not conducive to the stability of the imperial court's rule. Therefore, although the imperial court did not stop Taoism in this matter, they also never cooperated. Otherwise, as long as the local government screened the household registers of all the people in the area, they would be able to find all these cultivators with talent. In the Great Zhou, the influence of the various Taoism sects was naturally not as strong as that of the imperial court. If the imperial court did not support them, more than 90% of the cultivation geniuses would be buried like Li Mu and Lu Hanyan. If they did not have the opportunity, they would never embark on the path of cultivation in this lifetime. If not for that accident, Li Mu, as a bailiff, might have married and had children. He might have lived a mediocre life or he might have died in the line of duty. In reality, if not for Li Mu's soul being reborn, he would have already died in the line of duty. When he arrived at the entrance of the Yunyan Pavilion, Li Mu did not think about these things anymore. Earlier at the government office, he had been inspired by Xianxia and found a way to collect fear. Since he could scare Xianxia and collect anger, he could naturally scare others. He could open a haunted house in Yangqiu County and pretend to be a ghost to scare people. The better the business of the haunted house, the faster he could collect fear. Li Mu was not worried about the problem of customers at all. In this era there were not many entertainment options. Men's favorite pastime was naturally the brothel. However, not everyone had an invulnerable kidney like Li Si and could treat the brothel as their own home. At the very least, even if their bodies were made of iron, they could not afford to go there every day. After all, they were different from Li Si. They could not let the women in the brothel fall for them. It was precisely because there were no bars, KTVs, cinemas, bookstores, tea houses, theaters, and music halls that the business of the haunted house was so good. Li Mu should be the first person to open a haunted house here. When the time came, he could attract customers at an extremely low price or even for free. After all, he only wanted fear, not to rely on it to make money. Li Mu was not good at opening a shop, so he had to ask Lu Hanyan for help. In the Yunyan Pavilion, Lu Hanyan heard Li Mu's idea and hesitated. Your idea is possible, but would anyone really spend money to have someone pretend to be a ghost to scare themselves? Let's try it first. After people were full and satisfied with their material needs, they liked to seek spiritual stimulation. Disneyland tickets were so expensive, but there were still people coming in waves every day. Li Mu said, I don't know much about opening a shop, so I'll leave it to you. Deduct the expenses from my share. Lu Hanyin nodded and said, Shopkeeper Ren of the Four Seas bookstore sold the bookstore to us today. The location is not bad. If we open a shop there, business should be better. After Li Mu left, shopkeeper Huang walked up and said, Miss, didn't you just say that you want to make the Four Seas bookstore a branch of the Yunyan Pavilion? We'll talk about it later, this is more important. Lu Hanyin sighed and muttered, Wan, this is for your future happiness. Chapter 80. From the construction of the haunted house to the renovation to the layout, it would take at least half a month. However, only half of the half-year had passed, so Li Mu was not in a hurry. Leaving this matter to Lu Hanyin, Li Mu put more effort into his cultivation. In the soul-refining realm, he was like a child holding a large blade. Although the weapon in his hand was sharp, the child's strength was too weak. No matter how sharp the blade was, it would be a waste in his hands. His Fa Li was too weak and his cultivation was too low. These were Li Mu's biggest shortcomings. If he had Suhi's cultivation combined with various mysterious Dao techniques, even if he was not invincible in the middle realm, he would at least be able to walk unhindered in the sixth realm Dongshan and below. It was a pity that Suhi was not willing to live with Li Mu. Otherwise, when he was in danger, he would only need to let Suhi possess his body. In front of him, any demon ghost or heretical cultivation would have to kneel down and speak. Right now, he could only prepare as many spirit travel talismans as possible. If the situation was bad, he would run to Clearwater Bay. It had to be said that among the Dao sects, Fulu school was the most special one. In terms of alchemy, they could not compare to the Pill Cauldron sect. In terms of array formations, they were not as proficient as the Spirit Array sect. In terms of Dao techniques, they were not as good as the Southern sect, Northern sect, or Xuanzong. Fulu school's biggest advantage was that if one's cultivation was not enough, Fulu could make up for it. No one knew how many types of Fulu school had. No one knew how strong their Fulu was. When fighting with the Fulu school's disciples, it was difficult to judge their strength from the surface. A soul-refining realm cultivator holding a heaven-grade Fulu could easily kill a middle realm expert. Of course, the success rate of creating a heaven-grade Fulu was extremely low. It required an upper realm expert to try several thousand times before they could create one. This kind of Fulu was very rare even in the Fulu school. Only a few were produced in a year, and only a very small number of people had them. Exorcism talismans, soul lock talismans, and others were the lowest level of the yellow rank Fulu talismans. They could be used with a little bit of magic power. Divine travel talismans were already of the profound rank. Writing talismans required one to be at least in the soul refining realm. This Fulu was a must-have for escaping. With Li Qing's spirit concentrating cultivation, even ordinary transcendent realm cultivators might not be able to catch up to her. No matter what kind of danger he encountered, as long as Li Mu could reach Clearwater Bay, he would be in an invincible position. Therefore he planned to ask for a few more from Li Qing in case he needed them. When Li Mu came to the duty room, he only saw Li Qing. He walked into the duty room and said, "Boss?" Seeing Li Mu come in, Li Qing waved her hand and closed the door of the duty room. Li Mu was slightly startled and asked, "Boss, why did you close the door in the middle of the day?" Li Qing stood up and looked at him with a serious face. She asked, "Where did you get the clear heart technique that you taught me?" Li Mu saw her serious expression and asked carefully, Is this very important?" Li Qing took a deep breath and said, "I originally thought that this technique could save me the time to memorize the runes. Yesterday, when I was writing talismans, I found out that it could actually increase the success rate of writing talismans. Do you know what this means?" Li Mu was startled. "What?" Li Qing said seriously, "The higher the level of the Fulu, the harder it is to successfully write it. For a heaven-level Fulu, you can only succeed once after thousands of attempts. In the ancestral court of Fulu school, the number of heaven-level Fulu talismans produced in a year does not exceed 10. Li Mu knew what this meant. It meant that if the people of the Fulu school knew the clear heart technique, they could mass-produce heaven-level Fulu. In the cultivation world, heaven-level Fulu was like a nuclear weapon. It could only be written by powerhouses of the 7th level and above. It could seal one of their divine abilities in the Fulu. The higher the level of the Fulu, the lower the success rate. In the entire Fulu school, the number of heaven-level Fulu talismans produced every year could be counted with 2 hands. If heaven-level Fulu could be mass-produced, then when the time came, everyone in the Fulu school would have a heaven-level Fulu talisman. The soul refining killing divine ability and the spirit concentrating destroying Dongxian would be as simple as eating and drinking. The Fulu school would dominate the 10 continents and no one would be able to stop them, Li Qing said slowly. If this matter were to spread, it would bring a catastrophe to the Dao school. At that time, neither you nor I would be able to escape. You haven't told anyone about the clear heart technique yet? Li Mu's reaction to this was not as big as Li Qing's. The clear heart technique was not a catastrophe. If he were to spread the Buddhist incantation of 9 syllables in the Tao Te Ching, then it would be a real catastrophe for the Dao school. If he were to add the Heart Sutra, then even the Buddhist school would not be able to escape. Lu Hanyin was one of them and was trustworthy. In order not to worry Li Qing, Li Mu shook his head and said, "No. In this world only you and I know about it." Li Mu had a strange feeling that he was hiding something from another woman in front of her. Li Qing asked doubtfully, "Then how did you get it?" Li Mu did not explain too much. He just said, "In short, boss, trust me. The clear heart technique will never be spread." Li Qing looked at him. She seemed to have a guess in her heart, but she did not ask any more questions. She said, "You have to remember my words. Once this technique is leaked, it will lead to a fatal disaster for you." She was so nervous about the clear heart technique. If he taught her the Buddhist incantation of 9 syllables, her reaction would be even bigger. Li Mu put aside his original idea for the time being and said, "Boss, can you draw a few talismans for me?" For Li Qing, the spirit-traveling talisman and the soul-searching talisman were not difficult at all. She directly drew a stack of talismans for Li Mu. Li Mu put away the soul-searching talisman and carried the spirit-traveling talisman with him. Li Mu could only write these 2 Fulu talismans when he reached the soul-condensing realm. He and Li Qing walked out of the duty room and met a mountain of meat. Seeing Li Qing, Wu Bo's huge face revealed a smile. "Junior sister Li, long time no see," Li Qing said lightly. "Senior brother Wu, long time no see." Wu Bo smiled and said, "It's almost noon. Junior sister Li, do you want to have lunch with me?" "No need." Li Qing rejected Wu Bo and said, "I still have to patrol. Senior brother Wu can eat by himself." Wu Bo sighed and said, "Junior sister Li, we are of the same origin. Why do you have to reject me every time? You know that I have the earth element body. If you and I can dual cultivate within 5 years, you will definitely be able to enter the middle realm." Li Qing's face was cold and said, "Sorry senior brother Wu, I like to cultivate alone." After that she ignored Wu Bo and walked straight out. Li Mu sneered in his heart. What was so great about the earth element body? Whether it was the speed of cultivation or the benefits of dual cultivation, it couldn't be compared with the pure yang body. If Li Qing was really a person who coveted the benefits of dual cultivation, Li Mu would have been ruined by her long ago. How could this fat man have a chance? Except for weight, how could he be better than him? Li Qing walked out of the county government. Li Mu was about to leave when Wu Bo suddenly said, "Stop." Li Mu stopped, looked at him and asked, "Constable Wu, what's the matter?" Wu Bo looked at Bai in his hand and said, "Where did you get your sword? I remember that this sword was used by junior sister Li before." Li Mu said, "The boss gave it to me. It seems that junior sister Li thinks highly of you." Wu Bo patted Li Mu's shoulder with a smile and said, "That's right. If junior sister Li thinks highly of you, you must have something special about you." Wu Bo left with a smile. Li Mu stood at the door of the county government, but his face was gloomy. Just now, when Wu Bo patted his shoulder, he sent a trace of evil yin qi into his body. Ordinary people, or even cultivators in the soul-refining realm, might only feel a trace of coldness in their body. However, Li Mu had the Dharma power of Buddhism and was extremely sensitive to evil yin qi. Even though Wu Bo did it secretly and hid this trace of evil yin qi very deeply, it still couldn't escape Li Mu's perception. Although Wu Bo was a cultivator, his heart was extremely vicious. If Li Mu was only an ordinary constable, he would fall seriously ill in the next few days after being invaded by the strand of baleful yin qi. If he only had the cultivation to refine the 3 souls, the strand of baleful yin qi hidden in his body would become an obstacle to his future cultivation. It would be very easy for it to erupt when he was about to break through, causing him to fall short of success. Li Mu's body flashed with a golden light and the trace of evil yin qi was expelled from his body. After doing all this, Li Mu didn't go home, but returned to the county government office. Hanja was reading a book on duty. When he saw Li Mu walk in, he hurriedly hid the book, a curtain of spring dreams, under the table and looked up to ask, "What are you doing here?" Since he had already formed a grudge with Wu Bo, Li Mu naturally had to inquire about his background in advance. Although he and Xianxia didn't get along well, they were comrades who had fought zombies together and pursued heretical cultivation. Li Qing, Xianxia, and Wu Bo all came from the ancestral court of Fulu school. Li Mu couldn't ask Li Qing, so Xianxia was a very good breakthrough point. He looked at Xianxia and asked, "Do you know much about Constable Wu?" "You mean Wu Bo?" Xianxia glanced at him and asked, "Why are you asking about him?" Li Mu said, "I'm just curious." Xianxia didn't continue to ask. He said, "We all come from the ancestral court of Fulu school. He and Miss Qing are brothers and sisters of the same branch. His grandfather is an elder of that branch and has the cultivation of the blessed realm." Xianxia told Li Mu all the important information about Wu Bo with a few simple words. Then he looked at Li Mu suspiciously and reminded him, "Wu Bo is an extremely petty person who will seek revenge for the smallest grievance. You'd better not provoke him." "Why would I provoke him? I can't beat him." Li Mu waved his hand and said, "What book were you reading that made you so happy just now? Let me have a look." Xianxia's expression became serious. He sat up straight and said, "This book is very profound. You won't be able to understand it." Chapter 81. After leaving Xianxia's place, Li Mu went to Old Wang's room. Old Wang wasn't in the room. Li Mu looked around and finally found him in the household. Old Wang was sorting out the household registration information. Li Mu walked in and asked, "Old Wang, is there any book that talks about the 5 elements body?" Li Mu didn't know enough about himself. In the Cultivation Foundation book that Li Qing gave him, although it mentioned the pure yin, pure yang, and the 5 elements body, it only mentioned a few words and didn't explain in depth. Old Wang's head was buried in the high pile of documents. He didn't raise his head and said, "Go look for it yourself." Li Mu went to Old Wang's room. His collection of books was very rich. Li Mu searched the bookshelves one by one. It took him half an hour to find a book called Records of the Supernatural in the corner. This book was a bit similar to the Records of the 10 Continents monsters. The difference was that the records of the 10 continents were all monsters and ghosts, but this book recorded all the monsters. The so-called monsters referred to people who were different from ordinary people. Pure yin, pure yang, and the 5 elements body were counted as monsters. In the boundless world there were all kinds of strange things. In addition, there were people with wings on their backs, people who could control fire, water, and people with natural spiritual pupils. They were all monsters. Compared to ordinary people, these people were born with some kind of special talent. If they were ordinary people, there wouldn't be any abnormalities. Once they stepped into cultivation, their true talent would be revealed. For example, people with natural spiritual pupils could only see ghosts without cultivation. If they succeeded in cultivation, their pair of spiritual pupils could control people's minds and turn them into their own puppets. It was incomparably evil. As for the 5 elements body, except for the earth element, the other 4 elements were no different from ordinary people before cultivation. The earth element body was mostly fat because of a certain reason. The degree of fat varied from person to person. Pure yang and pure yin were the best physiques for cultivation. Their advantages were mainly reflected in the speed at which they absorbed the spiritual qi of heaven and earth. They were also the best furnaces for dual cultivation. Dual cultivation with a person of pure yin and pure yang would bring great benefits to one's cultivation. Of course, if a man with a pure yang body and a woman with a pure yin body were to cultivate together, the benefits would be unimaginable. The description in the book even made Li Mu feel a sense of guilt. It seemed that if he did not dual cultivate with Lu Hanyan, it would be an extreme waste of resources bestowed by the heavens. After all, they had the right physique, the right gender, the right age, and they happened to be neighbors. This kind of coincidence might only happen once since the beginning of time. It was better not to bring this book back in case Lu Hanyan accidentally saw it and thought that it was some kind of hint from Li Mu. According to the description in the supernatural records, Li Mu had a better understanding of how precious these special physiques were. Wanwan's innate spiritual eyes and some other people who were born with innate magical powers belonged to mutations and were the rarest. Pure yin and pure yang bodies were 1 in 10,000. Yangqiu County had a population of more than 100,000, but there might only be a few people with pure yin and pure yang bodies, and they would never know. Although the 5 elements body was not as rare as the first 2, there was usually only 1 in hundreds or thousands of newborns. Those who were truly discovered by the various Taoist sects and accepted into the sect were even rarer. In this way he might meet one or two five elements bodies when he patrolled the streets every day. It was just that even they themselves did not know. Li Mu read with great interest. When he flipped to a page he found that it did not connect to the next page. Before he finished talking about pure yin, pure yang, and the five elements body he stopped abruptly and changed to talk about another type of physique. Li Mu picked up the book and found that one of the pages in the middle had been torn out. The person who read the book before did not cherish the book at all. Li Mu shook his head and put the book back to its original place. He flipped through old Wang's bookshelf and accidentally found a small practical spell in one of the books. As a common low-level spell, the breath control spell was not difficult to learn, but it was very useful. It could effectively hide the mana fluctuations on the body of a cultivator. As long as the cultivator's level was not too much higher than his own, even if they opened the third eye, they would not be able to see through him. After spending another hour to learn the breath control spell, Li Mu left the county office and went to the Yunyan Pavilion. He planned to discuss the construction of the haunted house with Lu Hanyan in depth. Lu Hanyan had no concept of this new type of entertainment, but Li Mu had been there a few times in his previous life, so he had a rough idea of the structure. The sooner the two of them decided on the plan, the sooner they could start construction and condense the spirit. By the time he finished discussing the details with Lu Hanyan, it was already afternoon. Li Mu changed his clothes and talked about books in the tea house for 2 hours. On one hand, he had promised Lu Hanyan that he would keep the customers for the tea house. On the other hand, there was no harm in absorbing more anger. Bai Suzhen violated the laws of heaven. After giving birth to the child, she was taken into the bowl by Fahai and suppressed under Leifeng Pagoda. Today, Li Mu was talking about the legend of the white snake. He changed the names of the places and changed the Jinshan temple to other temples so that he would not have a hard time explaining it to Xuandu the next time he met him. Li Mu had been talking about the legend of the white snake for half a month, but he did not finish it. When the story reached a critical point, he habitually stopped and slipped out from the backstage. Going out from the back door of the tea house, there was a deserted alley. Li Mu planned to sneak out to the front of the street when he suddenly heard a voice. What happened to Bai Suzhen and Su Xian? Li Mu raised his head and looked in the direction of the voice. He saw a 15 or 16-year-old girl in white sitting on the wall, swinging her legs and looking at him with her head tilted. Li Mu said, "Today's story is finished. If you still want to hear it, please come earlier next time." The girl shook her head and looked at Li Mu with dissatisfaction. "No, I want to hear it now." As she spoke, her clear and bright eyes suddenly turned into a pair of green vertical pupils. A shape-shifting monster. Li Mu's heart tightened. He immediately used Heaven's Eye and saw through the girl's body. The white-clothed girl sitting on the wall was a snake demon. Li Mu was definitely not a match for a shape-shifting monster. He was silent for a moment. After weighing the pros and cons in his heart, he said, "Since you want to hear it, I'll tell you." The girl said, "Start from the beginning." I didn't listen to the beginning. Li Mu did not expect that there would be a day when he would be caught on the spot by an audience for cutting off a chapter. However, he was not a match for this snake demon. He could only clear his throat and slowly speak. Bai Suzhen was a snake demon that cultivated for 1,000 years. In order to repay the scholar Su Xian for saving her life in her previous life, she turned into a human and married Su Xian. Fahai told Su Xian that Bai Suzhen was a snake demon. Su Xian was skeptical. Later, Su Xian followed Fahai's method and made Bai Suzhen drink Realgar wine during the Dragon Boat Festival. Bai Suzhen had no choice but to turn into her original form. However, Su Xian was scared to death. Bai Suzhen stole the immortal herb Lingji from the heavenly court and saved Su Xian. Fahai tricked Su Xian into the temple and put him under house arrest. Bai Suzhen and Xiaoqing fought Fahai together. The water flooded the mountain temple, but because of this, other living beings were harmed. Bai Suzhen violated the laws of heaven. After giving birth to a child, Fahai took her into his bowl and suppressed her under Leifeng Pagoda. Su Sherlin passed the exam and was conferred the title of a high official. He saved his father and mother and finally reunited with his family. The snake demon girl snorted coldly. This Su Xian even harmed his own wife. He really doesn't know what's good for him. Li Mu's mouth was dry. He pursed his lips and asked, "Miss, the story is over. Can I leave now?" "Wait." The girl jumped down from the wall and said, "I want to ask you about someone." Seeing that this snake demon didn't seem to have any evil intentions, Li Mu was slightly relieved. He asked, "Who?" The girl asked, "Have you ever seen a very tall person?" This snake demon was quite beautiful, but she was a little simple-minded. Li Mu said, "There are many tall people. I want to know what he looks like before I can answer your question." "Oh," the girl looked pensive. After a moment, she stretched out her hand and gently touched the void. A light shadow appeared in front of Li Mu. In the light shadow, the appearance of a tall and thin man appeared. Li Mu's heart thumped wildly. The tall and thin man in the light shadow was the lizard spirit that died in Li Mu's hands. The girl approached Li Mu and suddenly said, "Your heart is beating very fast. You've seen him before, haven't you?" Li Mu's face was shocked. He looked at the girl and asked, Is this a spell? Are you a fairy?" Under the effect of the breath concealment technique, as long as this snake demon hadn't reached the fourth realm, even if she opened her heavenly eye, she couldn't see through Li Mu's cultivation. At this moment in her eyes, Li Mu was just an ordinary person. It was reasonable for him to be shocked by this move. Besides, during the half-month in the theater, Li Mu's acting skills had greatly improved. Although he couldn't be completely flawless, it wasn't a problem for him to deal with this kind of small scene. The girl didn't deny or admit, but she no longer doubted Li Mu. She asked, "He's my subordinate. Have you seen him before?" Li Mu shook his head and said, "Fairy, I haven't." The girl waved her hand again. The light in the air changed and a human face appeared. She asked again, "Then have you seen this person before?" Li Mu looked at the dwarf's face and shook his head. "I haven't." Li Mu secretly complained in his heart. After killing the dwarf, the lizard spirit came. After killing the lizard spirit, a snake demon came. This snake demon was obviously here to avenge the dwarf and lizard spirit. Under normal circumstances, Li Mu couldn't possibly be a match for this snake demon. He absolutely couldn't expose himself. The girl looked at Li Mu's eyes. Her vertical pupils appeared again. She asked softly, "You really haven't?" Li Mu's heart shook. If he hadn't chanted the clear heart mantra in time, he might have been bewitched by her. His heart was calm, but a confused expression appeared on his face. He muttered, "No, looks like I can only ask someone else." The snake demon no longer paid attention to Li Mu. She slowly walked out of the alley and came to the main street. A snake demon in human form. Who knew what kind of trouble it would cause in the county? He had to report it as soon as possible. Li Mu followed her to the main street. In the distance, he saw a moving mountain of flesh on the street. Suddenly he had an idea. He said, "That's our county's constable. You can ask him. Maybe he'll know. P.S. I've started writing for more than a month. I haven't had much interaction with the readers. Today I want to have a simple chat with everyone. I'm not a content author. From history to fantasy to Xianxia, I want to write about everything. I want to try everything. I had the idea for Immortal Official of the Great Zhou 2 years ago. The final implementation was in the last half a year. The world of this book is taken from records of the 10 continents within the sea, and natural history. The background is a fictitious fantasy setting of strange stories from a strange tale, and Confucius does not speak. I want to write some interesting stories and some interesting people in this kind of setting. A greedy and gambler bailiff who is loyal to justice. The most lecherous and affectionate prodigal son. A cowardly and timid county magistrate who is awe-inspiring and righteous. A monk Zuan who likes to transcend souls physically. A fair-skinned and beautiful rich woman who has her own maid. A superior who wholeheartedly cultivates and is extremely protective of her own people. A little fox who thinks about how to repay kindness all day long. As for the main character, Li Mu, he's the same as most of us. He's good-looking, greedy, and afraid of death. His heart is open to the sun, and he has reverence for life. Although he's occasionally despicable, he also has his own adherence to justice. He can make mistakes, but he can also grow. He's an ordinary person who does extraordinary things. I'd like to thank all the new and old readers for every recommendation and every tip in the past month. I hope that in the days to come, Li Mu's story will bring you more joy and accompany you further. Chapter 82. After hearing Li Mu's words, the girl indeed walked towards Wu Bo. Li Mu took this opportunity to slip away quickly. From afar he could feel 2 strong waves of mana coming from behind him. Then a white shadow flew over Li Mu's head and headed out of the city. "Demon, where do you think you're going?" Wu Bo's body was fat, but his movements were not slow at all. He followed closely behind the snake demon and chased out of the city. Although Wu Bo was also at the 3rd realm, he was the grandson of an elder of the Fulu school. He definitely knew a few Dao techniques and had a few powerful Fulu cards. Even a fourth realm demon cultivator might not be able to gain much of an advantage against him. Li Mu was looking forward to it. It would be best if Wu Bo could subdue that demon, so that she would not find trouble with him in the future. The dwarf who helped the Zhao family commit evil as well as the lizard spirit, were all up to no good. That snake demon was on the same side as them, so she was definitely not a good demon. Li Mu would not show any mercy to the fairer sex. Li Mu returned to the county office. An hour later he saw Wu Bo return with a gloomy face. His clothes were somewhat tattered and he was limping. Half of his face was purple, obviously poisoned. As he walked he cursed angrily, "Damned snake demon, don't let me see you again. Otherwise I'll skin you and take your meat to make soup." A gentleman takes his revenge from morning till night. Seeing Wu Bo's miserable state, Li Mu felt much better. This damned fatty dared to use underhanded means against him, and even dared to snatch from him. Li Mu coughed and hurriedly threw those thoughts to the back of his mind. Constable Zhou walked out of his room. When he saw Wu Bo he was shocked and asked, "What happened? How did you end up in such a sorry state?" Wu Bo's face was gloomy as he said, "I met a transformed snake demon. I chased her out of the city and fought with her for a long time. In the end I still let her escape." Constable Zhou was aware of Wu Bo's strength and could not help but ask in surprise, "What's so formidable about that snake demon, to actually be able to escape from your hands?" "Let's not talk about this for now." Wu Bo looked at Constable Zhou and said, "The snake demon's venom is extraordinary. Even I can't resist it directly. There are no pills in the yamen that can dispel poison and heal wounds. The snake demon has been severely injured by me and can't run far. It must be hiding somewhere to heal its wounds. After I dispel the snake venom in my body I'll go look for it. When I find it I'll personally extract its soul and refine it." The fact that the snake demon was able to escape from Wu Bo's grasp was somewhat out of Li Mu's expectations. He returned to the duty room and carefully analyzed the possibility that the snake demon had found out about him. Although only Su-He knew that he had killed the lizard demon, if the lizard demon was able to find out about him through the Zhao family's matter, the snake demon might be able to do the same. Li Mu did not have Wu Bo's ability. Without Su-He by his side he was no match for the transformed snake demon. As the saying goes, take her life when she's sick. The snake demon had been injured by Wu Bo and was at its weakest. If Li Mu could find her, he could not only get rid of the scourge for the people, but also get rid of the hidden danger for himself. He could also take her spirit to cultivate. It was simply killing 3 birds with 1 stone. When Wu Bo fought, Li Mu would take advantage of the situation. This was to prevent him from benefiting when Wu Bo's injuries were healed. Li Mu was naturally no match for the snake demon in its peak condition. However, the same could not be said for a severely injured snake demon. Even if he could not defeat it, Li Mu could still run away. After checking his inventory of spirit travel talismans, Li Mu slipped out of the yamen. He followed the direction that the snake demon had fled and chased it out of the county. The demon hunting talisman in his hand emitted a faint light and guided Li Mu to a forest outside the city. The forest was a mess. There were fallen trees everywhere. There were countless large pits on the ground, with wisps of black smoke still rising from them. It was obvious that a fierce battle had taken place here not long ago. The demon hunting talisman was useless here. If he continued forward, he would be deep in the mountains that stretched for hundreds of miles. There were countless low-level demons in the mountains. An ordinary demon hunting talisman could not accurately find the injured snake demon. Li Mu searched the ground and finally found a white scale. The scale was very small. Li Mu wrapped the snake scale in the demon hunting talisman. He folded the fulu into the shape of a paper crane and threw it into the air. The paper crane slowly flapped its wings and flew in a certain direction in the mountains. Without the snake demon scale, the demon hunting talisman would lose its effect in a place where there were many low-level demons. However, with the snake demon scale, it could lock onto the snake demon's aura and find her location. Li Mu followed the demon hunting talisman and traveled through the mountains. As long as he did not go too deep, he did not have to worry about encountering powerful demons. According to Wu Bo, the snake demon had been severely injured by him and could not have run far. If not for Wu Bo being poisoned and not daring to delay, Li Mu would not have had the chance to pick up the loot today. The demon hunting talisman flew for only 15 minutes before it stopped somewhere in the mountains. Li Mu stopped in his tracks. He was on high alert and secretly stuck 2 spirit travel talismans on his legs. He stood on a tree and looked down. After looking around a few times, he finally found a white figure in the grass. Li Mu walked over carefully and saw the girl he had seen just now lying in the grass, motionless. He held the Bai sword tightly and walked over step by step. The girl in the grass was still motionless. Li Mu raised his sword but did not bring it down for a long time. Although he knew that the other party was a snake demon, what he saw was a girl about the same age as Wanwan. Li Mu could not bring his sword down no matter how hard he tried. A human's life was a life, and a demon's life was also a life. As a bailiff, Li Mu could not treat a human's life like grass, and similarly he could not treat a demon's life like grass. He decided to make things clear first. If she really was an evil demon who had done all kinds of evil, it would not be too late to get rid of her then. Li Mu picked up the branch again and poked the girls but saying, "Wake up!" The girl frowned and slowly opened her eyes. When she saw Li Mu, her expression became angry and she shouted, "So it was you. You lied to me." She used her hands to support her body and struggled to sit up, but she fell back into the grass. Seeing that she was seriously injured and could not even stand up, Li Mu heaved a sigh of relief and said, "Let me ask you a question." The girl looked at Li Mu with a fierce gaze and said coldly, "If you want to kill me then kill me. Stop talking nonsense." Li Mu thought for a while and threatened, "If you don't speak I'll take off your clothes first." This sentence was clearly more threatening than killing her. A trace of fear appeared on the girl's face and she said angrily, "You dare." Li Mu did not waste any more words with her and asked directly, "Why are you looking for the dwarf and the lizard? You really have seen them before." The girl clenched her silver teeth and said hatefully, "Father was right. Humans are all liars. I shouldn't have believed you." Li Mu glanced at her and said, "Hurry up and speak." The girl was clearly worried that Li Mu would do something overboard to her. She closed her eyes and said, "They are my subordinates, but they broke the rules of my subordinates and harmed people everywhere. I want to find them and clean them up." Li Mu was stunned for a moment and said, "You still want to lie to me?" The girl looked at him with disdain and said, "Only you humans would lie." Li Mu asked suspiciously, "You really didn't lie to me?" The girl snorted coldly. "If I lie to you I'm a dog." Li Mu said, "Swear." Worried that Li Mu would really take off her clothes, the girl pointed to the sky and said, "If I lied then let me become a dog." Humans had 7 souls. After cultivation and refining, the 7 souls and 7 emotions would be hidden in the body and not appear outside. Although demons also had souls because they did not know how to refine their souls, Li Mu could see the emotions of demons that had taken human form. When the girl was swearing, Li Mu used his heavenly eye and did not find any fluctuations in her emotions. This meant that she was not lying. Li Mu awkwardly put away Bai and said, "Miss, if I say that this is all a misunderstanding?" The girl did not respond. After saying these words to Li Mu, she used up all her strength and fainted again. What a sin! Li Mu almost wronged a good demon. He wanted to slap himself. He sighed, walked over, picked up the girl and slowly walked out of the mountain bay of clear water, in a small house covered by an illusion. Suhi was reading when she saw Li Mu carrying a girl in. She said in surprise, "What did you do to this snake?" Chapter 83. Don't mention it. Li Mu placed the girl on the bed and said, "It's all because I didn't investigate properly and almost killed her." Suhi walked over and glanced at the girl saying, "She's heavily injured." Li Mu held the girl's hand and silently chanted the Heart Sutra, transferring the Buddha's light into her body. The Buddha's light from the Heart Sutra was different from other sutras. It had a miraculous effect on healing injuries. As the Buddha's light poured into her body, the girl's brows gradually relaxed. After her eyelashes trembled, she slowly opened her eyes. The moment she opened her eyes, she saw Li Mu and was shocked. She curled up her body and retreated to the corner. She covered her chest with her hands and looked at him in horror. "What are you doing?" Li Mu retreated and waved his hand saying, "Don't worry, I'm not Su Xian, I'm not interested in snakes." The girl still did not let down her guard. She clenched her teeth and said, "You humans are all liars." Li Mu sighed. This time he had indeed embarrassed the humans. The black-robed man's matter was because he was too cautious and worried about accidentally killing people. He was almost invaded by his inner demon and fell into a trap. This time, the snake demon was not cautious enough and almost killed a good demon by mistake. He even made her misunderstand the entire human race because of him. Li Mu stood by the bed and looked at her, explaining, "The dwarf wanted to kill me and was killed by me. The lizard spirit wanted to avenge the dwarf and also died by my hands. I thought you were an evil demon like the lizard spirit, so I tricked you into provoking that person. This was all a misunderstanding. The trust between the two had already collapsed. The girl was still wary of Li Mu. I don't believe you. Li Mu formed a seal with one hand and pointed to the sky, saying, I can swear a Tao oath. If what I said just now was false, let me become a dog. The girl stared at him in a daze, the wariness in her eyes dissipating a little. Although she was a demon, she also knew that human cultivators did not dare to violate a Tao oath. Moreover, he had made such a heavy oath, he should not be lying to her. Li Mu saw that she believed him, so he struck while the iron was hot and said, Give me your hand, I'll help you heal first. The girl thought for a moment and recalled the feeling just now. She tentatively stretched out her hand. Li Mu held her hand again. Her hand was very cold. Li Mu once again drew out the Buddhist light and continued to send it into her body. A satisfied expression appeared on the girl's face, and she found that her injuries were slowly recovering. A moment later, Li Mu released his hand and said, Now you should believe that I'm not trying to harm you, right? If you want me to believe. The girl rolled her eyes and said, You have to continue healing me. Li Mu didn't have much Buddhist magic left. He had already used up more than half of it and was a bit tired. However, since the young woman had spoken, he reached out again. After all, he was the one who caused all this trouble and almost caused her to lose her life. Li Mu owed her too much. Even if he had to squeeze out the last of his spiritual energy, he had to satisfy her. So comfortable. So warm. Continue, don't stop. A moment later, the girl bathed in the Buddhist light and fell into a sweet sleep. Li Mu wiped the sweat from his forehead. When he stood up, his legs gave way and he almost fell. Suhi caught him in time and said, You're just too kind. I have to take responsibility for the trouble I caused. Li Mu sighed and looked at Suhi. He asked, Is it convenient for her to heal here? Suhi waved her hand. What's inconvenient about it? I've been alone for too long and I'm looking for a companion. Li Mu asked again, No one will find her with the demon-seeking talisman, right? Suhi said, Don't worry, this illusion has the effect of concealing one's aura. Even if there's something on her body, they won't be able to find here. With Suhi around, Li Mu was completely relieved. It was already late. He bid farewell to Suhi and used the spirit-traveling talisman to return home before it was dark. The events of the past 2 days gave Li Mu a lot of warnings. If power was not restrained, it would be equivalent to a scourge. As an official of the Great Zhou dynasty, he could indirectly control the life and death of others. He had to be cautious at all times and maintain reverence for all life. Doing this was not only to protect the law, but also to protect Li Mu's heart. Ren Yuan's example was in front of him. When a cultivator no longer feared life, it was very easy for them to walk the same path as him. No matter if it was a human life or a demon life. The next morning, when Li Mu woke up, he unexpectedly discovered that the mana in his body had increased slightly. It was almost equivalent to a month of his hard work. In the morning, he routinely patrolled the streets before returning to the county office. As soon as Li Mu entered the front office, he saw Wu Bo standing in the front office's courtyard like a mountain of flesh. Below his feet was a pile of colorful snake corpses. In a corner further away, there was a dead giant python. Anja was right. This guy was indeed vengeful. Obviously, he did not find the snake demon, so he caught some ordinary snakes to vent his anger. He picked up a snake, took out its gallbladder and threw it into his mouth. He cursed, Damn it, that snake demon was heavily injured by me. It couldn't have escaped. Did someone take advantage of me? Li Mu silently returned to the duty room. There was no one there. He strolled around and came to Lao Wang's place. Lao Wang's erudition told Li Mu that there was no harm in reading more. There was a large collection of books in his duty room. Although most of them were useless, Li Mu could occasionally find something good. Cultivation methods were as vast as the sea. No one knew everything. Cultivation methods existed between heaven and earth. Today's cultivators were just following the path of their predecessors. The more they knew their own ignorance. Li Mu read at Lao Wang's place until he went to the county office. He cooked a table of food and left a portion for Wan Wan to eat. He put the rest in a food box and left the city for the Gulf of Clearwater. With the spirit travel talisman, it was much more convenient for him to travel between the county and the Gulf of Clearwater. The snake demon girl had already let down her guard against Li Mu. Yesterday, Li Mu overdrew his mana to heal her. Today she was able to get out of bed. She used her hands to grab the food in the food box and raised her head to stuff it into her mouth. Li Mu looked at her and asked, "How is the taste? If it's not to your taste, do you want me to catch some toads, frogs, mice and the like?" "Bah!" The snake demon girl glared at him fiercely and said, "You're the one who eats those disgusting things." Li Mu took out the dish she grabbed with her hands and put the other dishes on the table. The girl finished her own dish in a short time. She climbed to the side of the low table and reached out to grab the other dishes. Li Mu patted the back of her hand and handed her a pair of chopsticks. She used one hand to grab the chopsticks but didn't know how to use them. She copied Li Mu and Su He but still didn't take a bite. She angrily threw the chopsticks to the side and said angrily, "Humans are so troublesome." Li Mu put a portion of the food into her bowl and let her use her hands to grab it. Then he said, "Hurry up and eat. After you finish eating, I'll treat your injuries. After you're healed, you can leave here." Her injuries were caused by Li Mu. Li Mu had the obligation and responsibility to treat her injuries. After her injuries were healed, Li Mu would go his way and she would cross her single-plank bridge. One human and one demon would no longer be involved. The girl snorted and said, "I'm not leaving here. It wasn't easy for me to escape from home." Li Mu was stunned and asked, "Didn't you say you came out to clean up the door?" The girl glanced at him and snorted, "Can't I clean up the door while I'm at it?" Li Mu shrugged and said, "When the time comes, you can go wherever you want to go. It has nothing to do with me." The girl put down the bowl and licked her fingers. She looked at Li Mu and said, "I'm not full yet. I want more." Li Mu silently went to the river and caught 2 fish. He roasted them on the shore. Su He stood behind him and said with a sour tone, "I don't see you running to Clearwater Bay so diligently. You men really forget the old when there's a new person. Isn't this what I owe her?" Li Mu said helplessly, "What new person or old person? She's just an outsider." "Outside demon. After her injuries are healed, we'll immediately drive her away." The snake demon girl poked her head out of the window and snorted, "I heard it all." Su He waved her hand and the window closed from the outside. The girl seemed to have hit her head. Ouch. She didn't move anymore. Su He looked at Li Mu again and said with satisfaction, "She's an outsider. Then I'm an insider?" To be precise, she was an insider. However, this word didn't sound very nice. Li Mu didn't continue Su He's words. A female ghost who had been single for 20 years would tease people one after another. Ordinary people wouldn't be able to resist. Li Mu said sincerely, "We're friends who have been through life and death. How can that little snake compare to us?" The window of the small house opened from the inside. The snake demon girl said unconvinced, "Who are you calling small? When I turn into my original form, I'm bigger than you." Chapter 84. After exhausting his magic power to heal the snake demon once again, Li Mu dragged his exhausted body back home. Even though her injuries weren't light, the body of a demon had astonishing recovery ability. Coupled with Li Mu's careful healing, she would be able to recover to her original state in half a month or even a month. This way, the guilt in Li Mu's heart would lessen by a lot. In the following period of time, Li Mu and Lu Hanyan set up the haunted house while taking time to heal the snake demon at the Bay of Jade. They didn't have time to care about the county yamen. Luckily, with Li Qing's protection, Constable Zhou wouldn't say anything. Under Li Mu and Lu Hanyan's busy day and night, the preparations for the haunted house were completed after half a month. The signboard of Four Seas Bookstore had been taken down and replaced with the 2 large words Yudu. The 2 words Yudu were specially hired by Lu Hanyan. The handwriting was demonic, making people's hair stand on end when they saw it. It also made many people stop in their tracks. Most of the people were familiar with the 2 words Yudu. After all, in the stories of gods and monsters that they had heard since they were young, Yudu Ghost Region was a place that appeared very frequently. It was rumored that in the northwest direction of Ancestral State, 3,600 miles away, where the sun set, there was a dark and gloomy place called Yudu. Yudu was 200,000 miles wide and was shrouded in ghost fog all year round. It was a country of ghosts. Regarding the description of Yudu, whether it was the ghost stories passed down from generation to generation or the ghost novels circulating in the streets, they all mentioned it. Inside the open door of the shop was pitch black, as if it really led to the land of evil ghosts. Coupled with the 2 strange words Yudu, many people would feel apprehensive when they saw it. It was human nature to watch a commotion. A strange shop that opened on the street naturally attracted a lot of attention. Many people gathered at the entrance of the shop, looking inside while discussing softly. What shop is this? Why haven't I seen it before? Why would such a good shop have such a strange name? I remember that this used to be a bookstore. Later, the bookstore owner's son died, so he sold the bookstore. Does anyone know what this shop is for? While the crowd was discussing, a few workers brought out a table from inside and placed a silver ingot on the table. They said to the crowd, "Whoever dares to walk around the store, this silver ingot is yours." As soon as he said that, the crowd was in an uproar again. Really? Really? I'm afraid there's at least 10 taels of silver here. 10 taels of silver just to walk around the shop? What is this shopkeeper trying to sell? 10 taels of silver was not a small amount of money. It was more than enough to cover the expenses of an ordinary citizen for a year. Many people immediately became envious. However, although they were tempted, everyone knew that this money was not so easy to take. No one would give away such a large sum of money for no reason. There must be something fishy going on. The shiny silver ingot attracted many people, causing more and more people to gather around, but still no one dared to enter. I'll do it. At a certain moment, a burly man walked out from the crowd and asked the worker at the door, "If I walk around the store, these 10 taels of silver will be mine?" The worker nodded and said, "This is what our shopkeeper said." The burly man turned around and said to the crowd, "This is what he said himself. As long as I walk out of the store, these 10 taels of silver will be mine. Everyone please be my witness. Go in. Let's see what's inside." Amidst the crowd's cheers, the burly man strode into the store. It was pitch black inside the store. The crowd could not see anything from the outside. They could only hear the burly man's screams from time to time, which made their hearts tighten. Although they knew that these 10 taels of silver were not easy to earn, they were curious about what was inside that could make the burly man scream. However, no one dared to go in and take a look. After a while, the burly man walked out shakily. His face was extremely pale and he had to hold onto the table to stand firm. He looked at the worker weakly and asked, "Can I take these 10 taels of silver?" The worker shrugged his shoulders and said, "It's yours." The burly man took the silver and was immediately surrounded by the excited crowd. "What's inside, tell us? What did you scream just now? What's inside?" The burly man was surrounded by the crowd. He straightened his back and said, "Nothing much, just a few workers pretending to be ghosts to scare people. It's only to scare those who are timid." Someone asked in disbelief, "Is there really nothing to scare people?" The burly man shook his head and said, "No. If there's nothing, then why are your legs shaking?" The burly man took the silver and squeezed out of the crowd. When he walked to the pavilion of smoke, he looked around. Seeing that no one was paying attention, he immediately dashed in. At the entrance of Yudu, the crowd stayed in the same spot and sized up the store. Finally, a courageous person walked forward and asked the worker, "If I go in and walk around, will there be another 10 taels of silver?" The worker shook his head and said, "There's no 10 taels. If the first person to go in and walk out by himself, the reward will be 1 copper coin. Tiske, only 1 copper coin. Who are you looking down on? Let's go. Hearing that there wasn't a reward of 10 taels of silver, most of the people dispersed. The burly man had screamed so miserably that they were also afraid. 10 taels of silver was worth the risk, but 1 copper coin was too much. Most of the commoners had dispersed, but there was still a small portion that stayed behind. It wasn't that they were greedy for the copper coin, it was purely out of curiosity. Usually, other than watching plays and listening to songs, they didn't have much entertainment. Who knew what this shop called Yudu was up to, but it gave people a sense of novelty. Finally, someone couldn't resist the curiosity in his heart and walked into the shop. The windows of the shop had long been sealed. Even though it was daytime, the shop was still pitch black. Only the candlesticks that were placed every few steps away from the shop emitted a faint light. A person walked 2 steps with a curious heart when a ghost face suddenly appeared in front of his eyes. That ghost had a green face and sharp fangs, looking sinister and terrifying. Its tongue stretched out 3 inches and almost scared the soul out of the person. In his panic, he immediately threw a punch over and smashed it on the face of that green-faced ghost. The ghost cried out in pain and hugged its face while howling non-stop. That person was stunned for a moment. "It's a human?" The green-faced ghost covered its face and said, "Customer, you are too heavy-handed." Only then did that person remember what the burly man had said and came to a realization. So it's a ghost in disguise. After understanding that the store was filled with fake ghosts, his guts immediately grew and he swaggered forward. Not long later he met hanged ghosts, drowned ghosts, headless ghosts, and even zombies with sharp fangs sticking out of their mouths. Even though he was mentally prepared, when these ghosts jumped out from the darkness he was still shocked. When he walked out of the store his legs were already weak. A worker stood at the door and asked with a smile, "Customer, how do you feel? Is it exciting?" That person wiped away the cold sweat on his forehead and said, "It's really King exciting." Even though he had been frightened by the ghosts and monsters inside many times, he had to admit that walking around this Yudu had indeed given him a thrill that he couldn't experience in brothels and other places. In the past, when they heard about ghosts and demons, who wouldn't tremble in fear? They usually kept a respectful distance from demons and ghosts, so this was the first time they had come into contact with them at such a close distance. Even though they knew those were all fake, the instant they were frightened, they still felt a fresh sense of excitement. Within Yudu, Limu was dressed in white and had disheveled hair. After scaring a customer into running away and losing his shoes, a smile appeared on his pale, ghost face. Quite a bit of fear had already gathered in his body, which meant that using the method of scaring people by pretending to be a ghost to absorb the fear was feasible. Even though there weren't many customers today, as long as the store advertised more and shouted out the slogan of having a grand opening discount and free tours of Yudu, he believed that in a few days his fear would be satisfied. When that time came, as long as he had enough courage, he would be able to condense his soul and completely break free from the death curse of the Taoist priest on the street. Thinking about this, Limu was filled with enthusiasm. His body flashed, and he appeared beside a young girl who had just entered the haunted house. He grinned and said eerily, "I died so tragically, give me back my life, wah." The young girl was so frightened that she broke down and cried loudly. After her body trembled, Limu's feet became wet. Chapter 85. The business of Yudu was much better than what Lu Hanyan had expected. She couldn't understand why there were so many people who liked to seek excitement and were willing to let others act as ghosts to scare them. She and Wanwan had only gone in once and never went near that place again. Even if she was given money, she wasn't willing to try walking in that kind of terrifying place. The sound of Limu practicing his sword came from next door, and Lu Hanyan tapped her feet lightly. She floated up and jumped over the courtyard wall, landing steadily in Limu's courtyard. After Limu had taught her rock leap technique, she didn't like to walk through the door anymore. Lu Hanyan stood in the courtyard and looked at Limu to ask, "How's your collection of fear feelings going?" Limu put away his sword and said, "It's almost done." The opening of Yudu was free for 10 days, and there was an endless stream of customers every day. Even though the emotional power of ordinary people was weak, they won in numbers. Limu had already accumulated enough fear feelings in his body. If it wasn't for the fact that the courage Xianxia had given him wasn't enough to refine the fear feelings he had collected, he would have been able to condense the fourth spirit right now. In that case, can I collect money now? Lu Hanyan raised her eyebrows and said, "These few days the business of the shop looks good, but it's actually been losing money." Limu had already achieved his goal of collecting emotions, so he didn't care about it and said, "You are the lady boss, you decide." He went back to his room to change his clothes and said to Lu Hanyan, "I have something to do and will be going out, don't wait for me for dinner tonight." Lu Hanyan watched him walk out the door and curled her lips. She said, "Men are all heartless. The shop doesn't belong to me alone." He ran away after absorbing enough fear. He didn't even say thank you. Wanwan stood beside her and said softly, "That's because young master didn't treat Miss as an outsider. I'm not anyone to him, so what right does he have to not treat me as an outsider?" Lu Hanyan snorted and said, "Let's go to the shop and have a look. Men are all the same. Money is still the most reliable," Wanwan said. "It's different." "Young master is reliable." Lu Hanyan gently patted her head and reminded her, "Even if you marry him in the future, you have to be careful. You're so stupid. Even if you're sold, you'll still help others count the money. Young master won't sell me." "You wretched girl, you're hopeless." Limu left his home and exited the city. He stuck on a spirit travel talisman and headed for Clearwater Bay as usual. For the past few days, he had to act as a ghost in the haunted house and come to the Gulf of Clearwater to treat the snake demon. When he returned home at night, his magic power was completely depleted. He was so exhausted that he did not want to move at all. Fortunately, hard work paid off. The snake demon recovered very quickly. In 2 or 3 days at most, he could drive her away. Li Mu quickly approached the gulf of clear water. From afar, he could feel 3 powerful magic power fluctuations. Li Mu was very familiar with one of them. It belonged to Suhi. The other 2 were on par with Suhi in terms of aura. They were emitting a monstrous aura that soared to the sky. 4th level monsters. Li Mu's expression changed. He increased his speed again. A moment later, 3 figures appeared in front of him. Suhi held 2 bone swords in her hands and was fighting with the other 2. The 2 of them were tall and sturdy men. One of them held 2 steel rings while the other held a large knife. When they clashed with Suhi's bone swords, the sound of metal clashing rang out. Clearly they were not ordinary weapons. Li Mu used his Heaven's Eye, but he could only see the monstrous aura emanating from their bodies. He could not see through their bodies. The cultivation of these 2 monsters was not inferior to Suhi. When the 2 of them joined forces, Suhi was on the losing end. Li Mu's expression darkened. He rushed in the direction of Suhi and shouted, "Sister Su, over here." Suhi threw out 2 bone swords and temporarily repelled the 2 monsters. She quickly retreated. When she reached Li Mu's side, she quickly merged with him. At this moment, Li Mu once again felt that abundant power. Boom! The 2 monsters were stunned. Before they could recover, countless thunderbolts suddenly exploded above their heads. The thunderbolts were purple and emitted a terrifying aura. One of the burly men did not hesitate. He threw the steel ring in his hand above his head. The steel ring formed a shield, protecting the 2 monsters. Rumble. Bolts of thunderbolts descended. The surroundings of the 2 monsters were completely turned into a sea of thunderbolts. Shock flashed in the eyes of the 2 monsters. This thunder technique made them feel fear from the bottom of their hearts. Especially the purple thunderbolts. The aura was even more shocking. If they were hit by it, they would be severely injured even if they did not die. The steel ring was actually a decent defensive Dharma treasure. Li Mu withdrew his thunder technique. With a thought, the Bai sword buzzed and slashed at the 2 monsters. The 2 monsters hurriedly raised their weapons to block. However, they could not keep up with the speed of Li Mu's sword. A few wounds were instantly cut on their bodies. However, the wounds healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. The bodies of 4th realm monsters were indeed tough. A Dharma treasure like the Bai sword could only scratch their skin. The 2 monsters looked at each other and roared at the same time. Their bodies rapidly changed. Li Mu focused and saw that the burly man with the steel ring had transformed into a huge green ox. The other man had transformed into a colorful tiger. His aura was much stronger than the one that Xuandu had killed. Li Mu asked, "What are they doing?" Suhi snorted and said telepathically, "I don't know. They came here and attacked me directly. Don't talk nonsense with them. Let's beat them into submission first." Li Mu did not say anything else. He silently recited a spell. The Bai sword turned into thousands of shadows and surrounded the 2 monsters. All the escape routes of the 2 monsters were sealed. Feeling the powerful aura of the sword shadows, despair finally appeared in their huge monster eyes. Without a doubt, the female ghost had the ability to kill them after combining with the young man who had suddenly appeared. "Stop fighting." A white figure ran out from the forest. When she saw the 2 monsters, she was surprised and said, "Uncles, why are you here?" Seeing that the snake monster seemed to recognize the 2 monsters, Li Mu stopped his spell. The 2 monsters transformed back into their human forms. They looked at the snake monster and said happily, "Young mistress, you're fine." "Of course I'm fine." The girl looked at them and asked, "Did father ask you to find me?" The ox monster nodded and said, "Your father was very worried when you suddenly left home this time. You don't understand the outside world. Humans have the most sinister intentions. They can easily be deceived by them. What if something happened to you?" The snake monster girl glanced at Li Mu and said in agreement, "Humans are the worst." Suhi came out of Li Mu's body. A sense of emptiness attacked Li Mu, making him feel that everything was dull. The snake monster girl ran to Suhi and introduced, "Sister Su, these 2 are my uncles." She said to the 2 monsters, "This is Sister Su. I've been recuperating at her place for the past few days." The 2 monsters cupped their hands and bowed to Suhi. The tiger monster said apologetically, "We were reckless just now and offended madam. Please don't take offense." Suhi's face turned cold and ignored him. The green ox monster stared at the tiger monster and said with a smile, "Young mistress is recuperating at young mistress's place. We've disturbed you. If we've offended you in any way, please forgive us." Li Mu clicked his tongue in wonder as he watched from the side. Demons were really different from each other. Previously, there was the lizard monster and the white tiger monster, which made Li Mu think that monsters were like that. They were ferocious and had rough personalities. The green ox monster and tiger monster were polite and thoughtful. They were more human than some humans. The tiger monster suddenly thought of something. He looked at the snake monster girl and asked, "You said that someone hurt you. Who is it?" The girl said angrily, "It's a fat constable." Preposterous. The tiger monster said angrily, "We've always minded our own business with the government. How dare someone hurt you in the small Xianxia County government? I'll go talk to their county magistrate." "Forget it." The girl snorted and said, "I'm not as good as him this time. I'll go back and cultivate. When I'm done I'll take revenge." The green ox monster said with emotion, "Young mistress, you finally know to cultivate. You used to be lazy. Otherwise, with your bloodline talent, you would have condensed a monster core long ago." The girl blushed and ignored the two monsters. She glanced at Li Mu and said, What are you waiting for? Go to the room and heal me." Chapter 86. In the hut by the water, Li Mu held the hand of the snake demon girl and guided the light of Buddha into her body. The girl was lying comfortably on the bed with a satisfied and happy expression on her face. She was even humming an unknown tune. Li Mu seriously suspected that her injury had healed and she was now freeloading. The light of Buddha triggered by the Heart Sutra seemed to be good for the demons and ghosts. The demons and ghosts of the Jinshan temple followed Xuandu and cultivated Buddhism all year round. The demon and ghost aura in their bodies were completely purified. Some of the supernatural powers and spells that could restrain the demons and ghosts were useless against them. Li Mu looked at the snake demon girl and asked, "Are you comfortable?" The girl nodded. "Yes. Your injury has healed, right?" "It has long been healed." Li Mu withdrew his hand and felt the numbness in her body. The warm feeling suddenly disappeared. The girl opened her eyes and frowned. "Why did you stop?" Li Mu wiped the sweat on his forehead and said, "I did this to help you heal. Since you have recovered, I don't have to do this anymore." She had been used to this comfortable feeling. When she thought that she would never be able to experience it again, she felt irritable. She rolled her eyes and suddenly had an idea. She suddenly said, "Why don't you be my husband, just like Su Xian and Bai Suzhen? Then you can help me every day." After more than 10 days of getting along, Li Mu already knew her very well. Although the little snake demon's cultivation was not shallow, her social experience was basically zero. She might not even know what it meant to be her husband. No. Li Mu didn't even think about it and decisively refused. "What?" The girl frowned and asked. "Because I don't like you. Why don't you like me? I'm a human, you're a demon. Then why can Su Xian and Bai Suzhen?" The green bull demon had been waiting outside for a long time. He couldn't help but poke his head in and said, "Miss, we should go." The girl pointed at Li Mu and said, "If you want me to go back I can, but you have to capture him as well." The green bull demon and the tiger demon looked at Li Mu as their bodies trembled. Just now, when they were surrounded by the 10,000 sword lights, they almost thought that their souls would be scattered, and their 100 years of cultivation would be destroyed in an instant. Even now, when they saw that young man, they still felt a little scared. The green bull demon said helplessly, "Young miss, stop fooling around." After realizing that she could not bring Li Mu back, the snake demon girl finally accepted the reality. She looked at Li Mu again and said, "I want to eat what I ate last time, the kind where many dishes are cooked in a pot." For the past half a month, Li Mu had been serving her as if she was his grandaunt. Knowing that she was leaving soon, he was overjoyed. He immediately returned to the county and bought her the side dishes for the hot pot. The kitchen utensils from last time when the three of them ate the hot pot together were still here. Li Mu had specially bought a set and didn't bring it back. After eating the hot pot once, the snake demon girl could already use chopsticks with great proficiency. Under Suhi's control, the copper pot slowly floated in the air. A flame calmly burned at the bottom of the pot. The girl used the chopsticks to flip around in the pot. She said unhappily, "Hey, why isn't there any beef today?" The green bull demon standing at the door coughed softly. Although Li Mu had invited them, the two demons did not sit at the table. They only stood at the door and waited. The three of them sat on the mat, surrounding a short table. Li Mu and Suhi sat cross-legged. The snake demon girl lay on her side opposite Li Mu. Below her waist she was restlessly twisting around. Li Mu was annoyed. He said, "Can you stop twisting?" The snake demon girl glared at him. "I like twisting. It's none of your business." Li Mu couldn't be bothered to quarrel with her. Anyway, this was already a farewell meal. After the meal, he and the snake demon would return to their respective homes and mothers. They might never see each other again in their lives. After the meal, no matter how unwilling the snake demon girl was, she still had to leave with the two demons. Before leaving, she held Suhi's hand and said, "Sister Su, when my cultivation is successful, I'll come back to see you." The tiger demon smiled at Li Mu and said, "Little brother, come to my Tiger Head Mountain in the future. I'll set up a banquet to entertain you." The Green Bull demon also smiled at Li Mu. "If you come to Green Bull Mountain in the future, you can come and find me." Tiger Head Mountain and Green Bull Mountain. Li Mu had never heard of them before. They might not be in the North County. The snake demon girl glared fiercely at Li Mu and said, "Liar, my name is Bain Xin. Remember it for me. I'll come back to find you." Li Mu waved at her and said, "Goodbye." Although she said goodbye, Li Mu couldn't wait for her to never come back. Li Mu was already unable to withstand her when she was at the transformation stage. When she successfully condensed a demon core and advanced to the middle realm, wouldn't she be able to reach the heavens? The two demons took the little snake demon away and finally disappeared from Li Mu's sight. Suhi sighed and said, "It's actually quite good when she's here. At least there's someone to talk to." Li Mu glanced at her. "Am I not a human?" Suhi's mouth twitched and asked, "After she leaves, will you still come every day?" She was blaming Li Mu. When the snake demon was here, she came every day. A female ghost with 20 years of cultivation was actually jealous of a snake. Li Mu explained, "I come here every day because her injury was caused by me." "Besides, you don't want to come with me?" Suhi shook her head and said, "It's not that I don't want to, it's that I can't leave." Li Mu asked in surprise, "Why?" Suhi didn't answer. She just silently walked away. Li Mu followed behind her in confusion. She walked to a place far away from the bay of clear water. Her footsteps stopped and she slowly stretched out her hand. Her finger passed through a certain space and slowly disappeared. Li Mu was shocked and asked, "What's going on?" Suhi retracted her hand and her finger condensed again. She turned and walked towards the small house and explained, "I can't go too far from here. Otherwise my soul will dissipate." Li Mu looked at her and asked, "Why is it like this?" With Suhi's fourth realm cultivation she could go anywhere in the world. There must be a deeper reason why she can't leave the bay of clear water. Suhi walked to the edge of the water and said, "You'll know once you go underwater. Taoism has a divine ability called entering water. It allows one to dive into the abyss and not drown. It allows one to freely travel through rivers and lakes. However, this divine ability can only be mastered by cultivators in the transcendent realm. Although the Fulu school has a Fulu that can avoid water, he doesn't have one. However, with Li Mu's current cultivation, holding his breath for half an hour is very simple. He took off his outer robe and jumped into the water. The gulf of clear water was a deep pool formed by the bend of a certain river. The pool water was dark green and the deepest part of the pool was more than 100 feet deep. Li Mu dived into the pool water and discovered that the water here was bone-piercing cold. He had to circulate his mana to resist the cold. The pool water is clear but visibility is not high. Li Mu dived towards the center of the pool and discovered that there is a strange building at the bottom of the pool. It seems to be a high platform about a few feet in radius. Most of it is buried in the mud and sand at the bottom of the pool. Only a small part of it is exposed. On the high platform, there are crisscrossing gullies that look like some kind of runes. Rays of light flowed through the gullies. Li Mu quickly realized that it is actually the spiritual energy of heaven and earth that has condensed into a substance. Could it be that this high platform hidden at the bottom of the pool has the ability to condense the spiritual energy of heaven and earth? Although it is called a stone platform, it is actually more like a sacrificial altar. It is just that I don't know who set it up and what it is used for. Li Mu sized up the sacrificial altar. Very quickly, his gaze was attracted by a white figure on the altar. It seems to be a woman lying quietly on the altar. Li Mu was too far away to see clearly. He swam closer and could barely make out the woman's appearance. The moment he saw the woman's face, Li Mu's expression changed greatly. He choked on his saliva and almost drowned. The woman's face on the altar is exactly the same as Su He's. Following Li Mu's gaze in the next moment, the eyes of the woman who seemed to be in a deep sleep suddenly opened. Chapter 87. On the underwater altar, the woman with the same face as Su He suddenly opened her eyes. She looked at Li Mu and gently sniffed. Li Mu's mind was in chaos. He felt that his blood, his soul, and the three spirits that he had just condensed were about to be sucked out of his body. In the next moment, a suction force came from above. His body quickly rose up. The moment he rushed out of the water, Li Mu saw the woman on the altar slowly close her eyes again. Li Mu landed on the ground in a sorry state. He looked at Su He and said in disbelief, "It's me." Su He glanced at the water and said indifferently, "To be exact, it's my physical body. The one standing in front of you now is my soul." Li Mu thought that Su He was only left with her soul. He did not expect that her physical body was still there. Moreover, it had strangely appeared on the underwater altar. That terrifying gaze just now seemed to have sucked away all of his blood essence and soul. Li Mu still had lingering fears when he thought about it. He could not help but recall the records of zombies in the monster records of the 10 continents. Jumping zombies could suck a person's blood essence and soul by biting them. Once a jumping zombie evolved into a flying stiff, it would be able to suck a person's blood essence and soul from a distance. The Su He under the water was definitely a mature flying zombie. After a person died, their soul would dissipate. Under a certain probability, the corpse would become a zombie. Low-level zombies did not have intelligence. However, when they evolved into a flying stiff, they could develop their own intelligence. Zombies that developed intelligence were no longer related to their original bodies. They were independent entities. For example, although Su He and the female corpse under the water came from the same source, one had inherited Su He's spirit and will, as well as all of her memories and emotions. The other had only inherited her physical body. Of course, according to common belief, the one standing in front of Li Mu was the real Su He. The one under the water was just an inhumane evil creature. He looked at Su He and asked, "Has she already gained sentience?" Su He nodded her head and said, 20 years ago when I died, my body sank into the river and was attracted by that strange stone platform. My soul was lucky enough to escape, but since then I couldn't go too far from the bay of clear water. My body, in these 20 years, was constantly nourished by the spiritual energy contained within the stone platform, and gradually gained sentience. If it wasn't for the fact that she couldn't leave the stone platform, I would have already been devoured by her. Li Mu wrinkled his brows. The reason why Su He couldn't go too far away from the Clearwater Bay should be because of this stone platform. He looked at Su He and asked, "Do you still remember the grooves on the stone platform?" Su He nodded. "I'll draw it for you." When Li Mu left the Bay of Clear Water, it was already very late. He planned to ask Old Wang when he went to the Yamen tomorrow. Perhaps he would know the mysteries of this altar. If he couldn't resolve internal matters, he would ask Li Si. If he couldn't resolve external matters, he would ask Old Wang. This was the experience that Li Mu had after getting familiar with them. When it came to matters of the heart, Li Si always had a unique view. And Old Wang was very knowledgeable. Whether it was the postpartum care of a sow, or the problems that one needed to pay attention to in the process of cultivation, he could talk tirelessly about them. Thinking about Su He's matter, Li Mu went to the Yamen early the next morning to find Old Wang. Old Wang was in the middle of organizing the household register. Li Mu handed him a piece of paper with all kinds of crisscrossing talisman characters. He asked, "Old Wang, can you tell what this is?" Old Wang put down the household register and took the piece of paper. He looked it up and down, left and right. After a long time, he looked at Li Mu and asked, "Where did you get this?" "You don't have to worry about that." Li Mu stood by his side and said, "Can you tell what it is?" Old Wang placed the piece of paper on the table and said, "This is a formation, an extremely complex formation. 5 different formations are nested together to form a great formation with many functions. The person who came up with this formation is extremely brilliant." Li Mu quickly asked, "What is this formation used for?" Old Wang said, "It's used to raise corpses." He stood up and walked to his own room. He wandered around a row of bookshelves for a moment and took out a book. He opened it and flipped through a few pages. He pointed at a strange symbol and circled an area on the paper. He said, "Look, the function of this part of the formation is to raise corpses." Li Mu carefully compared it and found that the part that Old Wang circled on the paper was very similar to the strange symbol on the book. There was a description of this symbol in the book. This talisman was a kind of formation pattern. Its main function was to prevent corpses from rotting. If it was carved on a coffin, the corpse could be preserved for a long time. Old Wang stroked his beard and explained, "This kind of formation is very common in some tribes with special funeral customs. The North County doesn't have such customs. The government also forbids people from raising corpses. If corpses don't rot for a long time, it's easy for them to turn into corpses. People who don't know Taoism and raise corpses privately are courting death." Li Mu finally understood why Su He's body was still like an 18 or 19-year-old girl even though she had been dead for 20 years. It was most likely because of this formation. He pointed at the other parts of the talisman on the paper and asked, "What about these?" Old Wang explained, "This is a combination formation. Each part of the formation pattern has a different function. The bottom left part of the formation pattern is used to raise corpses. However, if this formation pattern doesn't have spiritual energy, it won't last long. Therefore, the person who set up the formation added a spirit-gathering formation on top of this. It's used to gather spiritual energy and provide it to the corpse-raising formation to maintain its long-term operation." When Li Mu recalled the spiritual energy flowing on the altar, it was as if it had materialized. He was full of admiration for Lao Wang. He couldn't help but ask, "What about the two on the right?" "The one on the top right is a seal to prevent the raised corpse from escaping. As for the one on the bottom right..." Old Wang stroked his beard again and said, "If I'm not wrong, this formation should be set up at the bottom of the water." Li Mu was shocked but his face didn't change. He asked, "Why?" Lao Wang said, he was probably worried that others would destroy this formation, so he set up an additional defensive formation. This formation needs to cut off a water vein. If you want to destroy this formation, you have to destroy this water vein or wait for the corpses in the formation to be strong enough to break out of the formation on their own. Li Mu was puzzled. This array formation had trapped Su He's physical body, so why would it affect her soul as well? He thought about it and asked, "What if the corpse's soul is still here? Then she definitely can't go too far from this formation." Lao Wang pointed at the piece of paper and said, "Do you see the rune in the middle? This rune has combined with the rune at the bottom left corner to form a very powerful seal. Although it's mainly used to trap corpses, the soul and the physical body are of the same origin. Similarly, it can't leave the formation too far, or it will directly dissipate." Old Wang's eyes were filled with admiration. He said, "The person who set up this formation is a genius. The 5 formation patterns complement each other. It's amazing, amazing." Li Mu wasn't interested in the person who set up the formation. This altar had existed before, and it was probably just a coincidence that Su He fell into it. Li Mu was thinking about how to save Su He. According to Old Wang, the formation had to be destroyed from the outside, or her body had to be destroyed from the inside. Only then could Su He be free. Destroying the formation from the outside meant destroying the water vein, which meant changing the direction of the river that flowed through Clearwater Bay. This was impossible. The county's water vein was the most important thing. Li Mu would probably be caught by his colleagues and brought back to the yamen before he could excavate it. He didn't know how long it would take for her body to be strong enough to destroy the formation. Even if she could come out, it wouldn't be a good thing for Su He. Putting all this aside, what was sealed in the altar was a flying stiff. It was a flying stiff that could suck a person's blood essence and soul from a distance. The zombie disaster in Zhou County was caused by a flying stiff, and it still hadn't subsided. If another flying stiff appeared in Xianxia County, who knew how many more people would die? Li Mu walked out of Old Wang's room with a heavy heart. He had to think about Su He's matter at length. He walked to the corridor and raised his head to take a look. He saw a 15 or 16-year-old monk standing in the yamen's courtyard, holding a Buddhist staff that was taller than him. Chapter 88. Li Mu thought for a moment and remembered the little monk's identity. Before Li Mu's cultivation, there were 4 other cultivators in the Yangqiu County government, apart from Jianghu County magistrates and Constable Zhou. Among the 4, Li Qing, Hanja, and Wu Bo were Taoist disciples from the ancestral court of Fulu school. The last one was from the heart sect of the 4 Buddhist sects. Both Buddhism and Taoism cooperated with the imperial court. The 2 sects would send their young disciples to be stationed in local government offices. Firstly, it was for the disciples to gain experience. Secondly, it was to help the imperial court govern the local government. Although the cultivators considered themselves as outsiders, they had to show the necessary sincerity to the imperial court if they wanted to establish a sect in the Great Zhou and recruit believers. Wu Bo stood opposite the little monk with snake corpses under his feet. Hanja was not exaggerating when he said that this person would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. Ever since the fat man suffered a loss at the hands of the snake demon, he had been angry. These days, no less than hundreds of snakes had died at his hands. The little monk looked at the snake corpses on the ground and frowned. He said to Wu Bo, "Constable Wu, why did you kill so many creatures?" Wu Bo said disdainfully, "They were just a few unenlightened snakes. So what if I killed them? You don't care if others kill chickens or ducks. Why do you care about me?" Amit Ba. The little monk chanted the name of Buddha and said with pity, "Chickens and ducks are domestic animals. When people kill chickens and ducks for food, they will accumulate evil karma. You killed the snakes for the evil in your heart. You will suffer the evil karma in the future." Wu Bo sneered and said, "How do you know that I didn't kill the snakes for food? Snake meat tastes good. I will eat snake soup today. Do you want to have a bowl?" The little monk was so angry that his face turned green. He chanted the name of Buddha a few times before he calmed down. He said slowly, "Constable Wu, the sea of bitterness is boundless. Repent and be saved." "I hope you won't continue to be wrong," Wu Bo said with disdain. "Sorry, I'm a cultivator. I don't believe in your boundless sea of bitterness." Constable Zhou came out from inside. Seeing the two of them at daggers drawn, he felt a headache and hurriedly said, "Don't quarrel, you two. The county magistrate has summoned you for something important. He's waiting for you. Come in quickly." Li Mu watched the commotion from the door of the guardhouse for a while before the two of them were called to the front office by Constable Zhou. This little monk also had a good temper. If it was Xuandu, Wu Bo would probably be kneeling on the ground and promising that he would never kill again. In Li Mu's memory, it was rare for the 4 cultivators of the Yamen to gather together. He did not know what had happened that made the 4 cultivators gather in the county Yamen. He walked back to the duty room and asked curiously, "Did something big happen in the Yamen?" "I don't know." Zhang Shan shook his head and said, "Boss was summoned by the county magistrate just now. We'll know what happened when she comes out." Old Wang came in and said, "I heard some news. It said that the zombies in Zhou County were not under control and the zombie disaster spread to our county. Last night, several people in the villages adjacent to Zhou County were bitten." Hearing Old Wang's words, Li Mu was shocked and asked, "The zombie disaster spread to our county?" Just one jumping zombie was enough to give the Yamen a headache. One could imagine what the consequences would be if zombies broke out in Xianxia County. The zombie disaster in Zhou County had already killed hundreds and thousands of people. 3 months ago, the county magistrate came out in person and gathered countless masters, but he still could not control the situation. If Xianxia County fell, the situation would probably be completely out of control. After all, zombies were different from ordinary monsters and ghosts. Without the intervention of the imperial court or cultivators, they could continuously turn ordinary people into their own kind. After a corpse was bitten by a jumping zombie, ordinary constables would no longer be able to subdue it. Flying zombies could create an unlimited number of jumping zombies. There was a record in the records of the monsters of the 10 prefectures, that hundreds of years ago, the most serious zombie disaster was caused by a spirit corpse. This spiritual zombie directly turned a small country into a country of zombies. The flying stiff was just a general term. The strength of a zombie at this level was roughly equivalent to that of a cultivator in the middle 3 realms. The strength of a spiritual zombie was even above the flying stiff and was close to the upper 3 realms of cultivation. This type of zombie could be called a corpse cultivator. Their intelligence was not inferior to that of ordinary people. They knew spells and could use supernatural powers. Their bodies were made of copper and iron. Lightning could not penetrate them and magic treasures could not hurt them. They could compete with cultivators in the 7th realm. Back then, the spirit corpse had caused a huge commotion. In the end, the spirit array sect had to send out several elders to cover the entire small country with formations. Then they had to send out countless high-level cultivators to quell the disaster. If the zombie disaster in North County was too big, the imperial court would probably use a similar method and give up on North County to solve the overall crisis. Our county is also plagued by zombies? When Zhang Shan heard this, his face turned pale. After the Zhang family village case, his fear of zombies still hadn't dissipated. Old Wang chuckled and said, "Don't worry. North County is where the ancestral court of Fu School is located. Now that things have gotten to this point, they won't ignore it. If Fu School is serious, let alone one or two flying stiff, even if a spiritual zombie comes, it won't be able to do anything." After a while, Li Qing walked in from outside. Seeing that everyone was there, she said, "There's an important matter that I need to inform you all of." She said with a serious expression, "The zombie disaster in Zhou County is spreading to Jianghu County. The county magistrate ordered us to inform all the villages in the county and tell them not to go out at night. You also need to inform the people in your jurisdiction to be more vigilant." Li Mu's jurisdiction was in the county. If zombies appeared here, then the entire Jianghu County would fall. Li Mu went door to door to inform the people on Weiyang Street. The threat of zombies was huge. After a day, a small number of shops along the street closed their doors. There were also fewer people on the street. The Yunyan Pavilion, which had a lot of customers, was also deserted. Lu Hanyan decided to close the shop. Under Li Mu's reminder, she stocked up on glutinous rice and stayed at home with Wanwan. They didn't leave the house and didn't take a step out. Although the possibility of zombies appearing in the county was very small, one of them had a purine body and the other had natural spiritual eyes. They were the kind of people that zombies would be picky about. It was better to be prepared just in case. While eating, Lu Hanyan looked at Li Mu and asked, "When will those zombies be eliminated? The shop is losing money every day. It can't go on like this." Li Mu shook his head and said, "I don't know. Don't open the shop for now. I'll let you know when it's ready." Lu Hanyan glanced at him and said, "You're not the shopkeeper. Of course you're not in a hurry. If there are no customers for a month, who knows how many shops will close down? If the Yunyan Pavilion closes down, will you feed Wanwan and me?" Li Mu shook his head and said, "My monthly salary is only 500 coins. I can't afford it." Wanwan immediately looked at Li Mu and said, "I'm very easy to feed. I can only eat one bowl of rice every time. Miss is even easier to feed. She only eats a little bit every day." Lu Hanyan looked at Wanwan helplessly and said to Li Mu, "Fortunately, the haunted house was built long ago. Otherwise, I'm afraid it would delay your business." Li Mu smiled and said, "Don't worry. Those zombies won't be able to jump around for long." The ancestral court of the Fu School was in the North County. They didn't do anything before because they believed that the North County government could solve this matter. Now that the situation had spread, the government was having a hard time dealing with it. The Fu School would not stand by and do nothing. In the past 2 days, many students of the Fu School had gone down the mountain to participate in quelling the zombie disaster. This time Li Mu had to take some risks. Fear was a rebellious emotion. It was difficult to refine and required a lot of courage. Li Mu originally planned to go to Zhou County to obtain the courage he needed from the zombies. After this disaster was quelled, he could directly condense his soul. Obtaining courage from zombies was different from extracting courage from monsters. Li Mu planned to go to Old Wang's place first to find a way to obtain courage from zombies. Chapter 89. Old Wang was in the duty room. He took out a book from the bookshelf and threw it to Li Mu, asking, "How many spirits have you refined?" Li Mu memorized the formula for extracting zombie spirit and said, "I've reached the 4th spirit." Old Wang shook his head and said, "With the cultivation of the 4th spirit, you can deal with white and black zombies, but it's too difficult to deal with jumping zombies. You should be careful. It's best to let Miss Qing help you extract the spirit. She just came to ask me how to extract zombie spirit." Li Mu was stunned for a moment and asked, "Boss came here?" Old Wang clicked his tongue and said, "Miss Qing is really good to you. She doesn't necessarily only treat you as a subordinate. Young man, you have to seize the opportunity." Someone cared more about him than he did. This made Li Mu's heart surge with warmth. Li Mu came to the duty room. Li Qing was reading the records of monsters in the 10 continents. She turned to the page about the habits of zombies. Seeing Li Mu come in, she raised her head and said, "I've checked. There will be a large amount of spirit left in zombies. In 2 days we will go to Zhou County. I will help you extract some then. This way you can condense the 4th spirit as soon as possible." Li Mu walked forward and suddenly asked, "Boss, why are you so good to me?" Li Qing was stunned for a moment, then said indifferently, "You are my subordinate. I naturally have to be responsible for your life." Li Mu asked, "Just because of this?" Li Qing looked at him and asked, "Otherwise? If it were someone else, Li Mu might think that they coveted his pure yang body and wanted to dual cultivate with him, but Li Qing had always said what she wanted. This zombie incident was completely different from the last time in Jianghu village. There were countless jumping zombies and even flying stiff. Even if a transcendent realm cultivator was involved, they would not be able to escape unscathed. Li Qing was only at the spirit condensation realm. She had to take a great risk to help him collect spirit. Li Mu couldn't watch her take risks for him with a clear conscience. He thought for a moment and said, "Boss, come with me. I have something important to tell you." Li Qing asked, "Can't we talk about it in the guardhouse?" Li Mu shook his head. "This is not the place to talk." He turned around and walked out of the room. Li Qing thought for a moment, put down the book in her hand and followed him out. After walking out of the duty room, Li Mu walked straight out of the county government office. Li Qing looked a little confused, but she still followed Li Mu. Wu Bo stood at the door of the other room and looked at the backs of the two men as they left. A trace of gloominess flashed across his chubby face. Li Mu walked out of the county government and then out of the county. Using the light body technique, he came to a deserted forest. Li Qing landed beside him, and the expression on her face became serious. She asked, "What happened? Do you need to talk about it here?" Li Mu looked back at her. His hands formed the 6-ding jade maiden seal, and his mouth whispered, "Lin." A white thunderbolt appeared out of thin air and fell on a huge tree in front of them. The huge tree was directly split into pieces. Thunder and fire swirled in the air, and the debris splashed in all directions. Thunder method. Li Qing's pretty face showed an incredulous expression. The next moment she seemed to realize something and said in shock, "No, this is Taoist magic." Li Mu's life principle was to take revenge and repay kindness. The kindness of saving his life, the kindness of teaching him, the kindness of giving him treasures, and the kindness of taking care of Li Mu in daily life. None of these could be repaid with a tranquil heart technique. If Li Qing was willing, even if Li Mu wanted to repay her with his pure yang body, it was not impossible for him to consider it. Actually, Li Mu had long wanted to impart this thunder method to Li Qing. However, he had never thought of a good reason. He could not always say that he obtained it by accident. Otherwise, everyone would be suspicious. This time he had to quell the zombie disaster and collect courage for himself. It was abnormally dangerous and his life could be in danger at any moment. Li Mu did not have the luxury of time to think. He looked at Li Qing, who was rooted to the spot, and said, "Boss, the 6-ding jade maiden seal and the true word Lin is this thunder method Dao technique. You have to familiarize yourself with it as soon as possible. Even if you meet with the flying stiff, you'll be able to counter it." With his soul-refining realm cultivation, Li Mu could use this true word to instantly kill third-realm demon cultivators and ghosts. Although the fourth realm was already fundamentally different from the third realm, Li Qing's dermic powers were much thicker than Li Mu's. With the help of this Dao technique, it was not difficult for her to kill enemies one level above her. Although the flying stiff was neither a demon nor a ghost, it was still an evil being and was countered by thunder method. If Li Qing encountered it, even if she could not kill it, she could still protect herself. Li Qing looked into Li Mu's eyes and finally understood why he had brought her here. The power of thunder method was immense. Among all the dermic methods, it was also one of the best. Thunder method Dao techniques were extremely rare. The rarity of a thunder method Dao technique that only had one true word was evident. For Dao techniques and abhijnas, the shorter the true word the better. The shorter the true word, the faster the dermic method technique could be cast. This played a crucial role in battle. Li Mu looked at her and said, "Boss, you try it first." Li Qing did not say anything else. She shifted her gaze and formed the 6-ding jade maiden seal with her hands. She said silently, "Lin." Another bolt of lightning appeared in front of them, blasting a charred hole in the ground. Unlike Li Mu's white lightning, the lightning that Li Qing released was purple. When he was possessed by Su He the previous 2 times, Li Mu also summoned purple lightning. Without a doubt, the power of the purple lightning was greater than that of the white lightning. Li Qing chanted the Lin word silently again. Dozens of white lightning bolts appeared in the sky, raising a small hill with a radius of around 10 feet to the ground. It was very obvious that the purple lightning was more powerful and consumed more dermic powers. Compared to the purple lightning, the white lightning required less dermic powers and could cause an area of effect attack. Li Qing took a deep breath and said, "I will practice this Dao technique more." Li Mu had already thought of an excuse, but he did not expect that Li Qing did not even ask him. He was stunned for a moment. Looking at Li Qing, he asked, "Boss, why don't you ask me where this Dao technique came from?" Li Qing said calmly, "Everyone has their own secrets. You have your own opportunities and secrets. Why do I need to get to the bottom of everything?" Her temperament was indeed indifferent. Lu Hanyan was different. Her curiosity was heavier than a cat's. She wanted to get to the bottom of everything. Whenever Li Mu returned late, she would beat around the bush to find out where Li Mu went. In other words, this was also a display of Li Qing's trust in him. Li Qing did not ask him, and Li Mu did not need to explain. The two of them looked at each other and did not say anything. When they returned to the county, it was already noon. Li Mu knew that Li Qing usually ate alone. She liked to eat noodles and often visited a roadside noodle stall. The noodle stall was opened by a widowed woman. Li Mu and Xianxia had eaten there a few times. The taste was really good. "Boss, do you want to eat at my house?" There was one at home. Li Mu had to go home to cook. When the two of them were about to leave, he asked politely. Li Qing stopped in her tracks. After thinking for a moment, she nodded and said, "Okay." Li Mu was slightly stunned. He did not expect her to really agree. She had always been a loner. Han Zhe and Wu Bo had invited her to eat with them many times, but she had directly rejected them. Li Mu was also stunned for a moment. He nodded and said, "Boss, what do you want to eat? I'll make it for you." Li Qing, "Whatever." When other women said whatever, there might be countless interpretations. If Li Qing said whatever, then it was really whatever. Li Mu thought for a moment. Considering Li Qing's preferences, he still made his best Xianxia noodles. One also liked to eat it very much. She could eat at least 3 bowls every time. If she ate more than usual, 5 bowls would not be a problem. At a noodle stall on Weiyang Street, Zhang Shan slurped a mouthful of noodles and almost scalded his mouth. He quickly took a few breaths and inadvertently looked at the street in front of him. He said, "Isn't that the boss?" "Li Mu is also here." Li Si slowly ate his noodles. When he raised his head and saw Li Qing walk into Li Mu's house, his hand movements also paused. Zhang Shan put down his chopsticks and said in surprise, "The boss and Li Mu went home. Why did they even close the door?" Li Si glanced at him and said, "Don't make a fuss. Eat your food." Somewhere on the street, a very fat figure sat by the window on the second floor of a restaurant. He looked at the two figures walking on the street below. His eyes flashed and no one knew what he was thinking. After returning home, Li Mu took Li Qing to the study and said, "Boss, take a seat first. I'll go and cook." After Li Mu left, Li Qing did not sit down. She stopped in front of a row of bookshelves. There were not many books on this bookshelf. Most of them were basic books on Taoism cultivation, as well as some miscellaneous books, such as records of supernatural beings, and records of monsters in the 10 continents. There was a stack of papers on the desk, and the words "Strange Stories from a Chinese Studio" were at the top of the page. This "Strange Stories from a Chinese Studio" had been popular in Yangqiu County for a month. Li Qing had heard of it, but she did not read these books usually. She only knew that this book was selling well in the bookstore, but she did not know the specific content. This was obviously a manuscript that had not been published yet. Li Qing walked to the table and saw a lot of such manuscripts stacked at the corner of the table. In addition, she also saw a golden hairpin on the table. This golden hairpin was extremely exquisite. The hairpin head was a lifelike phoenix. Obviously it was a woman's item. Footsteps came from outside the study, followed by a woman's pleasant voice. "Have you finished the 5th volume of Strange Stories from a Chinese Studio? I seem to have left the hairpin here yesterday. Help me find it." Chapter 90. Lu Hanyan stepped into the study but did not see Li Mu. Instead, she saw an unfamiliar woman. The woman's appearance was outstanding. She was tall and wore an official uniform similar to Li Mu's. She had a trace of masculinity. Lu Hanyan's eyes lit up at first sight. She was stunned for a moment, then asked, "You're here to see Li Mu?" Li Qing could tell at a glance that the woman in front of her was also a cultivator, but her cultivation was not high. She seemed to have only refined 2 souls. She looked at Lu Hanyan and nodded. "I'm Li Mu's colleague." Under his gaze, Lu Hanyan felt as if she had been seen through. She panicked for no reason and said, "I am his neighbor. Is he not at home?" When Wan ran into the kitchen, Li Mu knew that Lu Hanyan should be here as well. He walked out of the kitchen and saw that she was not in the courtyard. When he walked to the door of the study he saw her. When Lu Hanyin went to the county yamen for the case of the Yunyan Pavilion, Li Qing was not there. This was the first time the two met. Li Mu walked into the study and introduced her to Lu Hanyin. "This is Constable Li Qing, my superior." Then he said to Li Qing, "This is Lady Lu Hanyin, my neighbor." "Greetings, Constable Li." "Greetings, Lady Lu." After introducing them to each other, Li Mu returned to the kitchen. Wanwan helped Li Mu in the kitchen. Lu Hanyin and Li Qing walked into the courtyard. Li Qing had a cold personality. When she was with people she was familiar with, she rarely spoke. Although Lu Hanyin was smooth and slick, she did not know what to say at this moment. After a while Wanwan ran out of the kitchen. When she saw Li Qing standing in the courtyard, she said in surprise, "Hey Constable sister, are you also eating at our house today?" Lu Hanyin quickly explained, "Don't listen to her nonsense. She's been freeloading here all day. She already thinks of this place as her own home." Li Qing smiled faintly and did not say anything. She looked at Lu Hanyin and said, "Lady Lu is also a cultivator." "I'm not a cultivator." Lu Hanyin smiled and said, "I just learned a few things from Li Mu." Li Qing smiled and said, "Lady Lu's talent for cultivation is very good. She was able to condense her soul in such a short time. Her future achievements are limitless." Lu Hanyin still remembered Li Mu's warning not to mention her pure Yin body and talent for cultivation to anyone. She did not continue this topic. She looked at Li Qing again and praised, "Constable Li is so beautiful and so powerful in cultivation. I'm so envious." Lady Lu is also very beautiful. When Li Mu came out with 2 bowls of noodles, he heard Lu Hanyin and Li Qing flattering each other. Before the meal they seemed to be chatting well. But during the meal they did not say anything. The atmosphere was a bit cold. One was a constable of the county government and the other was a shopkeeper. They did not have much in common. Li Mu wanted to liven up the atmosphere, but he did not know what to say. After thinking he asked Li Qing, "Boss, are the cultivators from the county government going to Zhou County this time?" Li Qing nodded and said, "The county governor has ordered all the cultivators from the 13 counties in the North County to come to Zhou County within 3 days and help Zhou County quell the chaos this time." Li Mu thought for a moment and asked, "Should I go?" Li Qing said, "You haven't condensed your soul yet. You can stay in the county government." Usually when the 3 of them ate together it was very lively. Today there was one more person so it was a bit cold. Li Qing left after the meal. When there were outsiders, Wanwan was embarrassed to eat too much. She only ate 2 bowls. Now she was eating her 3rd bowl. Lu Hanyin helped Li Mu clean up the dishes and asked, "What's Constable Li's realm?" Li Mu said, "The 3rd realm, spirit condensation." Lu Hanyin had just refined the 2nd soul. Hearing this she said in surprise, "So high." Li Mu nodded and said, "They have been cultivating since they were young. We have only cultivated for a few days. Of course we can't compare." In terms of talent, Li Mu and Lu Hanyin were better than Li Qing. However, Li Qing had been cultivating in Fulu school since she was a child. After more than 10 years of hard work, Li Mu and Lu Hanyin, who had just started cultivating, could not catch up with her. Lu Hanyin said with envy, "God really favors Constable Li. She is so beautiful and her cultivation realm is so high. When can I be as powerful as her?" Li Mu glanced at her and said, "Others can say this, but what right do you have to say it? If one were to say that the heavens would take care of some people, then he would definitely take care of Lu Hanyin much more than Li Qing." Not only was she outstanding in appearance, her figure was impressive, her cultivation talent was high, and she had a 1 in a million purine body. She was also so rich. Thinking about it, even Li Mu began to envy her. Lu Hanyin understood the meaning behind Li Mu's words. She was a little proud and said, "Constable Li seems to be very good to you. This is the first time you have brought someone back for dinner?" Li Mu nodded and said, "In this world, she is the person who treats me the best." Li Mu was alone in his previous life. After coming here he was still alone. Because very few people were good to him, Li Mu kept in mind all the good things that others did to him. Li Qing introduced him to cultivation, gave him bai and helped him draw talismans. In front of her, Li Mu almost fulfilled all of her requests. Lu Hanyin was not related to him. Just because they were neighbors, she stayed up for 3 days in a row to help him change the script of transforming into butterflies. In order to help Li Mu collect fear, she gave up the planned branch of the Yunyan Pavilion. She loved money the most, but she would rather give up the profits of the bookstore to help him prepare a haunted house. Li Mu remembered all of these. He put down the bowl and said, "The courage in the zombies is helpful for soul condensation. I will go to Zhou County this time to help you collect some. With your talent you will soon reach the soul condensation realm. You don't have to envy anyone." After careful consideration, Li Mu still decided to go to Zhou County in person. Firstly, he was worried about Li Qing. Secondly, Li Mu also wanted to train himself through actual combat. A cultivator who only knew how to guide cultivation was no different from a flower in a greenhouse. When it came to fighting with people, it was just a show. Although Zhou County was dangerous, it was also a rare opportunity to train. To deal with evil creatures like zombies, Li Mu might not be able to beat them, but he could definitely run away from them. The last reason was that Li Mu also wanted to collect some courage for Lu Hanyan and Wanwan. In terms of cultivation, besides Li Qing, he could also ask Old Wang for advice. Lu Hanyan and Wanwan only had Li Mu behind them. Shopkeeper Lu was so nice to her and Wanwan was so obedient. Apart from cultivation, Li Mu did not have many opportunities to repay her. Lu Hanyan, who was beside him, did not respond. When Li Mu turned around, he realized that she had already left. 1 yard away in Lu Hanyan's room, she snorted and said angrily, "Wanwan, do you think I am good to him?" Wanwan raised her head and asked in confusion, "Who?" Lu Hanyan said, "Who else? Of course, it's the young master you keep talking about every day." Wanwan said, "Miss, you are very good to the young master. You have never been so good to anyone before." Lu Hanyan turned her head and snorted, "Humph, I'm not as good to him as Constable Li." Wanwan pulled her sleeve and whispered, "Miss, don't be angry." "I'm not angry." Lu Hanyan waved her hand and said, "Why would I be angry because of a man? Men are all pig trotters, pig trotters." Wanwan's throat moved. She murmured, "Miss, let the young master stew pig trotters for us tonight." Lu Hanyan reached out and tapped her forehead. She said angrily, "Eat, eat, eat. You only know how to eat. You don't even know when your husband will be taken away." Wanwan was shocked. She said nervously, "Who wants to take the young master away? You haven't married yet." Lu Hanyan rubbed her head and sighed helplessly. She said, "It's over. You are so stupid. Who can you beat? Even if you get married, you will be bullied." Wanwan lowered her head and said embarrassedly, "Miss, you are smart. I will follow you." Lu Hanyan said, "You are following me now. Can you follow me for a lifetime?" Wanwan said, "Yes. How can you follow me after you get married?" "I can still follow you after I get married." Lu Hanyan was stunned for a moment. Then she twisted the little girl's ear and said angrily, "Stupid girl, what are you thinking?" Chapter 91. After dinner, Li Mu returned to the county yamen and told Li Qing his idea. Li Qing said in surprise, "You want to go to Zhou County?" Li Mu nodded and said, "I've already condensed the 3 spirits and can deal with ordinary zombies. Even if I can't beat them, I can protect myself. I can take advantage of this opportunity to train myself." Li Qing thought of Li Mu's Thunder Taoist magic and the Buddha's light that could restrain evil beings. After pondering for a moment, she nodded and said, "That's good too. When the time comes, you can just stay by my side." She looked at Li Mu and suddenly asked, "The book, Strange Stories from a Strange Story, is very popular on the market. Did you write it?" Li Mu said embarrassedly, "The salary is too little. It's all for living. I don't think I violated the Yamen's rules, right?" "No." Li Qing shook her head and said, "But there's something I hope you can tell me truthfully." Li Mu thought of Su He and Lu Hanyan's questions after reading Strange Stories from a Strange Story, and hurriedly explained, "Boss, please don't misunderstand. I'm not interested in those female ghosts, female demons, or female foxes. I just want to say that all things have spirits. Whether it's human or demon, they all have the right to pursue love." Li Qing shook her head and said, "That's not what I want to ask." Li Mu was puzzled and asked, "Then what is it?" Li Qing looked at him and asked, "Lady Lu, you also know the Qingxin formula, right?" If he had known that Li Qing and Lu Hanyan would meet one day and that she could tell at a glance whether Lu Hanyan knew the Qingxin formula or not, Li Mu would not have lied at that time. It was better to tell her at that time than to be directly exposed by her now. Li Mu opened his mouth and finally nodded and said, "I know." However, he immediately added, "But don't worry, boss. She definitely won't tell anyone. I didn't mean to lie to you last time." Li Qing didn't care. She shook her head and said, "This is yours." You can give it to whoever you want. You don't need to explain to me. Li Mu heaved a sigh of relief. It's good that you're not angry? Li Qing glanced at him. Why should I be angry? Regarding this matter, Li Qing did not seem to blame him. After saying this, she went out to patrol. Li Mu turned around and saw 3 heads sticking out of the window of Old Wang's duty room. Old Wang looked at him and shook his head. Li Si looked at him strangely as if he was looking at an idiot. Zhang Shan looked confused. Obviously he didn't know what had happened. Li Mu looked around and made sure that they were looking at him. He walked into Old Wang's duty room and asked, "Why are you looking at me?" Li Si said lightly, "When a woman says she's angry, she usually isn't angry. And when a woman says she's not angry, she must be angry." Old Wang clapped his hands and praised, "Brilliant." Li Mu looked at him and asked, "You're saying that boss is angry?" It was easy to tell if Lu Hanyan was angry. Her emotions were written on her face. When she was angry, it was like Li Mu owed her tens of thousands of taels of silver. Li Qing's emotions never showed. Li Mu found it difficult to judge her mood based on her expression and tone. Li Si knew more about this than Li Mu. If he said that Li Qing was angry, she was probably really angry. However, was she angry that Li Mu told Lu Hanyan the Qingxin secret art? Or was she angry that he didn't tell her that he taught Lu Hanyan the Qingxin secret art? He really couldn't understand a woman's thoughts. Li Si patted him on the shoulder and said, "It's useless for me to tell you. You can slowly understand this kind of thing." Zhang Shan didn't know what had happened, but he heard that Li Mu was going to Zhou County. He said, "I heard that you're going to Zhou County. How long have you been cultivating? Why are you showing off? Is that a place you can go?" Li Mu said, "Don't worry. With boss there won't be any danger." Old Wang said leisurely, "There are unexpected changes in the sky and people are unpredictable. Li Mu, don't let anything happen to you. I'm still waiting for you to send me off. Don't let me send you off, Ba." Zhang Shan spat fiercely and said, "Old man, can't you say something nice?" After that, he realized something. He looked at Old Wang and said angrily, "We'll send you off? Damn Old Wang. I treat you as a friend but you treat us as your sons?" He pretended to strangle Old Wang's neck. Old Wang coughed twice and said, "Be careful. If you strangle me to death, you'll have to buy me a coffin with your hidden money. In your dreams." Zhang Shan let go of his hand and glanced at him. He said, "At most I'll roll up 2 straw mats. I'll dig a hole for you in the mass grave and fill it with some soil." Old Wang shook his head in disappointment and said, "If you say so, all the money I've saved over the years will be given to Li Mu and Li Si." "You've saved money?" When Zhang Shan heard this, he immediately went up and said, "Do you like pine or fir wood for the coffin? Leave it to me. I promise that after you die, I'll arrange it properly for you." Old Wang thought for a moment and said, "Phoebe Jinan, if you really can't, sandalwood is also fine." Zhang Shan scolded angrily, "Bullsh *T, I can't afford that kind of wood even if I sell myself." "You'd better dream. You have everything in your dreams." Li Mu walked out of Old Wang's room and saw Wu Bo carrying a huge snake corpse in from outside. The little monk Huiyuan followed behind him and said angrily, "Constable Wu, this snake has already developed intelligence and is 1 step away from forming a fetus. It hasn't done anything to harm people. Why did you kill it for no reason?" Wu Bo sneered and said, "How do you know that it hasn't harmed anyone? Snakes don't eat grass." This snake has grown to such a large size and who knows how many creatures have lost their lives in its mouth. Killing it is also an act of justice on behalf of the heavens. The little monk said angrily, "You're twisting words and forcing logic." Wu Bo mocked, "Am I wrong?" Amit Ba. Huiyuan took a deep breath and said, "The heavens are watching what people do. Those who are unjust are doomed to destruction." "Constable Wu, you're on your own?" Zhang Shan looked over and whispered, "This guy surnamed Wu even dares to bully a monk. He'll suffer retribution sooner or later." "There's no such thing as retribution in this world." Old Wang sat in the room and shook his head. "Only good people have short lives and evil people live for 1,000 years. Those who kill and burn eat and drink well, and those who build bridges and pave roads, don't even have skeletons left." Zhang Shan shook his head and said, "Wu Bo ate so many snakes. Maybe one day he'll be eaten by a more powerful snake demon." Old Wang opened a book and said with a smile, "Look at what's written in the book. There's no such thing as a demon eating a human. It's all about humans eating humans. If you don't want to be eaten, you can only eat others." Since the last meal, Li Mu hadn't seen Lu Hanyan for 2 days. Only Wan Wan came twice. However, she was usually busy. She had to arrange music and rehearse. It wasn't uncommon for her to rest in the shop for several days in a row. Li Mu was about to leave for Zhou County in a while, so he didn't have time to say goodbye to her. He wrote a note and stuffed it through the crack in the door. When he returned home, he took the teleport talisman and evil punishment talisman with him and packed some clothes. When he walked out of the door, the courtyard next door was still closed. Li Mu shook his head and turned to leave. Not long after, a bouncing figure ran from afar. Wan Wan came to Li Mu's door with 2 pig trotters in her hand. She was about to knock on the door when she saw that it was locked. She turned around and said, "Miss, the young master isn't here? If he's not here, then he's not here." "As if I want to see him?" Lu Hanyan pursed her lips and opened the courtyard door. Just as she was about to step in, her eyes inadvertently glanced. She suddenly bent down and picked up a piece of paper from the ground. There were only 2 short lines on the paper. "I'm going to Zhou County. You and Wan Wan should be careful at home. Close the doors and windows at night. Remember to bring Fulu with you." Lu Hanyan's expression changed. She asked, "Aren't there a lot of zombies in Zhou County? Why is he going there?" Wan Wan raised her head and said, "Yesterday the young master said that there's something in the zombies' bodies that can help us cultivate. Who wants his help?" Lu Hanyan's face turned pale. She clenched the paper tightly and gritted her teeth. "That idiot." Chapter 92. In the front hall of the county government. Li Mu, Li Qing, Hanzhu, Wu Bo, and the little monk named Huiyuan were standing in the yard. Constable Zhou looked at them and said, "This trip to Zhou County will be very dangerous. You must pay attention to your safety. No matter what happens, self-protection is the most important thing." Li Qing did not stop Li Mu from going to Zhou County with them. Although this matter was dangerous, it was also an opportunity to train himself. Although she seemed to be really angry last time, she never mentioned it again after that. This was the biggest difference between Li Qing and Lu Hanyan. She would never act like a little girl and was not as narrow-minded as Lu Hanyan. Constable Zhou warned them and then looked at Li Mu saying, "Li Mu, your cultivation is the lowest. You must stay with the constables at all times. You can't go too far." Li Mu nodded and said, "Thank you, Constable Zhou. I know." Constable Zhou glanced at them again and said, "Constable Wu's cultivation is the highest. I hope you can listen to Constable Wu's arrangements on this trip. I will wait for your victory at the government office." Zhou County was a neighboring county to Xianxia County. It only took half a day for cultivators like Li Mu to travel from the county town of Xianxia County to the place where the 2 counties met. After leaving the county town, Li Mu and the other 3 used the magic traveling talisman to travel. The little monk Huiyuan could follow them stably with just his 2 legs. Li Mu walked beside Huiyuan and asked curiously, "Little Master Huiyuan, what kind of magic is that?" Huiyuan smiled and explained, "This is called the shadow following leg. It's pretty good to use it to hurry on the road." In this world, the cultivators of Taoism like to use talismans and formations to make up for the flaws in their Dharma powers. The Buddhists mainly cultivated Dharma powers and had countless kinds of Dharma powers. Li Mu had always wanted to learn, but unfortunately he didn't have the chance. Huiyuan looked at Li Mu and suddenly asked, "Benefactor Li gives me a very close feeling. Do you also cultivate Buddhist mana?" Li Mu nodded and said, "Master Xuandu once gave me a Dharma Sutra. So it's Uncle Xuandu." Huiyuan smiled and said, "Benefactor Li must have a deep Buddhist affinity to be favored by Uncle Xuandu." Li Mu said modestly, "You're too kind. I just read it casually when I have nothing to do." Traveling was boring and Li Qing did not like to chat. Li Mu, Wu Bo and Hanja had nothing to talk about. After getting closer to Huiyuan, they quickly started chatting. Although Li Mu had been chanting the Heart Sutra to cultivate, he did not have a deep understanding of Buddhist cultivation. Old Wang's bookshelf was filled with Taoist books. None of them were about Buddhism. In the conversation with Huiyuan, Li Mu found out a lot of information that he did not know before. For example, the first 3 realms of Buddhist cultivation were enlightenment, clairvoyance, and karma. The corresponding realms of Taoism were soul refining, soul concentrating, and spirit concentrating. In the lower 3 realms of cultivation, Taoism refined the 7 souls and Buddhism cultivated the 6 roots. They were actually somewhat similar. Huiyuan's current realm was the 2nd realm, clairvoyance. Li Mu could barely be considered to have just entered the enlightenment realm. Other than revealing a few Buddhist auras, he did not know any other Buddhist superpowers. The two of them chatted along the way. Before the sun set, they finally arrived at Zhou County. There was a small village adjacent to Zhou County in Yangqiu County. Many people gathered there. Most of these people were people in ragged clothes and looked haggard. There was also a portion of them who were cultivators. Their cultivation was not very high. Most of the people in the small village were injured. From the wounds on their bodies, it was obvious that they had been poisoned. Li Mu saw a cultivator grab a handful of glutinous rice from the cloth bag he carried with him and apply it to the wound on his arm. Black smoke immediately rose from the wound. The cultivator clenched his teeth and his expression was ferocious. He fainted from the pain. Amit Ba. Huiyuan looked away and could not help but recite the name of Buddha. As soon as they entered the village, they were welcomed in by an old official. As the old official walked, he asked, "Are you colleagues from Yangqiu County?" Hanja nodded and asked, "How's the situation in Zhou County?" "Much better." A smile appeared on the old man's face as he said, "Reinforcements from the various counties have arrived. Many immortal masters from the Talisman sect also came down and killed a flying zombie. The few towns in front are no longer in danger. Those who are here now are those who were injured earlier." From the old official's words, Li Mu and the others understood the general situation in Zhou County. A few days ago, the zombie disaster in Zhou County was on the verge of going out of control and spreading to the surrounding counties. The county governor had no choice but to gather the forces of the entire North County to suppress the zombies in Zhou County. He also asked for help from Fulu School. In just a few days, the situation was under control. There were countless experts in Fulu School. As soon as they arrived in Zhou County, they killed a flying stiff. If it were not for the birth of a few more flying stiff in the zombie horde in the past 3 months, the zombie disaster this time would have been mostly resolved. However, with this unprecedented power, it was only a matter of time before this disaster was resolved. Li Mu and the others were at the back of the county. Some injured cultivators and commoners were settled here. Further ahead were the villages that were most seriously affected by the disaster. The commoners gathered in villages. Those who lived outside were also asked to move to the nearest village. The zombies that wreaked havoc in Zhou County were not naturally formed white zombies and black zombies. After being bitten by flying zombies and jumping zombies, the people who turned into zombies were more dangerous than white zombies and black zombies. They hid in dark places during the day and came out to cause harm at night. Zhou County's geology was strange. There were many underground karst caves. In the past they were rare sights. This time they became the hiding places of the zombies. Daytime was the best time to exterminate these zombies. However, the underground karst caves were very complicated. Even if the cultivators found the entrance, they would not dare to go deep. They could only wait for the zombies to come out at night. The old official took them to a yard and said, "It's dangerous at night. I'll have to trouble you to rest here for the night. If you want to continue, you'd better wait until tomorrow morning." When zombies moved in groups at night, even cultivators in the realm of assembled spirit would find it difficult to resist. The cultivators in Zhou County usually moved in groups. The yard was very shabby. There were only 3 rooms. Li Qing was the only woman, so she naturally took one room. Wu Bo and Hanja stayed in one room, while Li Mu and the little monk Huiyuan stayed in the other room. Li Mu and Li Mu's room only had a wooden bed. After he put down the luggage, he found that Huiyuan was not in the room. Li Mu went outside and saw Huiyuan squatting beside an injured commoner. His hands were glowing with Buddha's light, which was slowly flowing into the man's wound. As the golden Buddha's light flowed into the man's wound, wisps of black qi came out. That was the corpse qi in his body. If the corpse qi was not removed, it would spread throughout the body and eventually make them lose their intelligence, turning them into zombies. This was also the trouble of zombies. As long as someone was scratched or bitten by them, even if they did not die at the time, they would eventually become one of them if the corpse poison was not removed in time. Although glutinous rice was effective in removing the corpse poison, the process was too painful. On the other hand, Buddha's manna had a miraculous effect on healing and removing poison. Li Mu walked to Huiyuan's side and squatted down. He stretched out his hand and a golden Buddha's light appeared in his palm. He channeled the Buddha's light into the other person's body. After a wisp of black qi came out of the man's chest, his face immediately became ruddy. Huiyuan looked at the golden Buddha's light in Li Mu's palm and smiled. Benefactor Li is indeed born with wisdom. You've only cultivated for a few months and you already have such abilities. If you can convert to Buddhism, there will definitely be an eminent monk in the future. Li Mu waved his hand. Let's talk about this in the future. Whether it was the old monk or the young monk, they all wanted him to become a monk. However, Li Mu was a layman. Although cultivating Taoism and Buddhism were all cultivation, after becoming a monk he could not marry a wife. The Buddha could not help him solve his personal problems. Cultivating Taoism did not exist. He could marry as many wives as he wanted. It was much more tempting than being a monk. Taking a step back, cultivating Buddhist abhijna did not necessarily require one to become a monk. Wasn't it good to be like this? Li Mu called the old official over and called out the people and cultivators who were injured by the zombies. Together with Huiyuan, they helped them remove the corpse poison. After the corpse poison was removed, their bodies immediately felt much better. Everyone thanked them profusely. Thank you, little master. Thank you, master. Because he could use the light of Buddha, Li Mu was also mistaken for a monk who cultivated with hair. After he explained a few times, he was too lazy to explain. Li Mu saved another person. When he turned around, he saw the little monk Huiyuan looking at him in a daze. Li Mu touched his face and asked, "Is there something on my face?" Huiyuan shook his head. "No." "Then why are you looking at me?" Huiyuan touched his bald head and asked, "Benefactor Li, don't you want merit?" "Merit?" Li Mu was stunned for a moment and asked, "What merit?" Chapter 93. Huiyuan put his palms together and said, "It is said in the Buddhist scriptures that one can break through life and death, achieve nirvana and save all living beings. It is called merit. This merit is the virtue of doing good deeds, so it is called merit." Li Mu looked at him and said, "Can you say something that normal people can understand?" Huiyuan scratched his head and said, "Doing good deeds such as giving alms, repairing temples, creating statues, setting people free and saving people from suffering can get merit. Merit is helpful for our cultivation. Doesn't Benefactor Li know?" Li Mu's understanding of Buddhist cultivation was very limited. At that time, Xuandu just threw him a Buddhist scripture. No one had ever told Li Mu about merit. After listening to Huiyuan's explanation, Li Mu understood. In layman's terms, merit was a kind of power obtained from the person doing good deeds. Li Mu seemed to be guiding other people's emotions in the same way. But it was obvious that merit and the 7 emotions were not the same thing. Li Mu could see the 7 emotions, but he could not see merit. Li Mu quickly thought of another point. If merit came from the person doing good deeds, then Li Mu could understand that giving alms, setting people free and saving people from suffering could get merit. But where did the merit of repairing temples and creating statues come from? He vaguely felt that the matter of merit should not be so simple. Now was not the time to trace the origin. Li Mu was thinking about another thing. He looked at Huiyuan again and asked, "How can merit help us cultivate?" Seeing that Li Mu really did not understand, Huiyuan explained, "Benefactor Li, close your eyes and feel your surroundings with your heart." Li Mu did not know what to do, so he simply silently recited the mind-clearing formula and purely used his spiritual sense to feel. After calming himself down, he indeed felt that there was something around him. That thing was very weak. If he did not calm down to feel, he would not have found it at all. But when Li Mu opened his eyes, he couldn't sense anything. Even if he used Heaven's Eye, he couldn't see anything unusual. This showed that merit and the 7 emotions were 2 completely different things. He closed his eyes again and soon felt the faint presence of that thing again. Huiyuan continued, "Try to absorb these merits into your body." Li Mu immediately used the Daoyin technique and absorbed all the floating things into his body. At the same time, Li Mu also clearly felt that the Buddhist magic in his body was circulating faster. He finally understood why Xuandu had said, "Helping others is helping myself," and why he liked to help others so much. Buddhist cultivators could directly use merit to cultivate. Perhaps back then, Li Mu had been used as a leek to harvest merit. Thinking about it carefully, he didn't feel any discomfort at that time. He didn't know what the cause of this merit was. What exactly was merit? Li Mu couldn't figure it out himself. He planned to go back and ask old Wang. "So there are such benefits to doing good deeds," Li Mu murmured. In that case, when he helped old ladies cross the road, sent lost women home and collected joy, he could also gain merit. It was just that he didn't know at that time and wasted the opportunity. Huiyuan shook his head and said, "We do good deeds not for merit. Benefactor Li, don't reverse cause and effect." Li Mu smiled and said, it's the same. Whether it was doing good deeds for merit or gaining merit while doing good deeds, the process was the same. In order to cultivate, Li Mu decided to do good deeds every day in the future. This way his Buddhist magic would quickly catch up. Under the efforts of Li Mu and Huiyuan, the corpse poison in the bodies of all the wounded gathered in the small village was completely removed. Even though each removal of corpse poison didn't require much magic power, but after helping dozens of people, Li Mu was still unbearably tired. After returning to his room, he sat on the bed and meditated. Huiyuan found a praying mat from who knows where. He sat cross-legged on the praying mat and wiped his staff until it was as shiny as his head. After wiping the staff, he sat cross-legged and closed his eyes. The curtain of night gradually enveloped the entire small village. The night was quiet. Suddenly Li Mu, who was sitting cross-legged on the bed, became alert. His eyes suddenly opened and he took out a talisman to ward off evil spirits. On the fulu, there was a faint fluorescent light flickering. Huiyuan, who was sitting on the praying mat on the ground, moved his ears. His eyes suddenly opened and he held the huge staff. There's danger. The two of them got up at the same time and rushed out of the room. They only saw two figures that had already flown out of the courtyard. Li Mu and Huiyuan rushed out of the courtyard and saw more than 10 black figures appear in the direction of the village entrance. They were running towards the village. Their movements weren't like the zombies that Li Mu saw last time. Instead, they were running stiffly. Their speed couldn't be compared to the one in Jianghu family village. The few of them didn't have time to think about why there would be zombies in Zhou County. They immediately went to meet them. Xianxia threw out a fulu. The fulu stuck to a living corpse and immediately ignited. The living corpse only had time to let out a low roar before its entire body was engulfed in flames and turned into ashes in a short time. The little monk Huiyuan's body faintly emitted a golden light. He waved the huge staff in his hand and smashed it on the head of a living corpse. The living corpse's head was smashed into pieces, but its body wasn't affected. Huiyuan smashed it with the staff again and quickly rushed over. With a few strikes of the staff, the living corpse was smashed into the ground and didn't move anymore. Xianxia threw out another fulu. Li Mu's eyes blazed with flames once again. In a short time, 5 to 6 living corpses were turned into ashes by their hands. Li Mu's eyelids twitched. There were only 10 or so living corpses attacking the village. In the blink of an eye, half of them were killed and turned into ashes. Nothing was left. How could he take the courage of the living corpses? In order to prevent more living corpses from falling into their hands, Li Mu wanted to join the battle. Li Qing waved her hand and several fulu flew out and stuck to the living corpses' foreheads. The living corpses immediately stopped moving. It's just a few low-level living corpses. Is there a need to mobilize so many people? Wu Bo yawned and walked out of the room. After taking a look, he turned around and walked back. Xianxia took out the fulu and was about to burn them when Li Qing said, "Wait." Xianxia was stunned for a moment and asked, "What are we going to do with them?" Li Qing walked to the side of a living corpse and made a hand seal. A green light hit the living corpse. After waiting for a long time, the corpse didn't have any reaction. She stood in front of the living corpse and frowned. Li Mu walked to her side and also noticed the abnormality. What Li Qing used just now was indeed the method of extracting the soul from the living corpse that she found from Old Wang. However, she didn't draw out the courage from the living corpse. Either the living corpse didn't have the courage, or the method given by Old Wang was wrong. Li Mu thought about it and felt that the latter was unlikely. Although Old Wang was old and had a lot of small problems, he was absolutely reliable at this critical moment. It should be that the living corpse didn't have the courage. Li Mu looked at Li Qing and said, "Maybe he hasn't harmed anyone yet. Let's try another one." Li Qing obviously thought of this possibility. She nodded and walked to another living corpse. She made another hand seal, but the living corpse still didn't respond. She walked to the third one, the fourth one. After testing the remaining living corpses, the two found that none of the living corpses had the slightest trace of courage. If there were only 1 or 2 living corpses, it could be explained by them not harming anyone. However, all the living corpses had no souls. This reason didn't make sense. Especially the last few, there were still traces of dried blood at the corners of their mouths. It was obvious that they had sucked the essence, blood and soul of people. However, Li Mu didn't see the existence of courage in their bodies when he used clairvoyance. Li Mu was puzzled and asked, "How can this be? If all the zombies didn't have a soul, his plan of extracting the zombies' courage to refine the fourth soul would fail." Li Qing glanced at the living corpses and said, "Let's burn them first. Tomorrow morning we'll go to the other villages to take a look." That you're tuning in to the Phantom Sword Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.